Welcome to Storytime with Sin. This we are reading. This is an omnibus, so that's why it's still the same cover. It is the second book in the Dresden Files series called Full Moon, and I enunciate so it doesn't sound like full. um, and this is, of course, written by Jim Butcher, of course. So pull up your favorite chair, your favorite place to sort of snuggle down and vibe. Get your favorite blinky. Get under that air conditioning if you're in a hot zone and just pretend like it's cold. That's what I do. And get your favorite beverage or favorite squishable or whatever, and sit back and listen. We're here to relax and vibe. No ill will today. Alright, Chapter 1. I never used to keep close track of the phases of the moon, so I didn't know that it was one night shy of being full when a young woman sat down across from me in McNally's pub and asked me to tell her all about something that could get her killed. No, I said, absolutely not. I folded the piece of paper with its drawings of 3 concentric rings of spidery symbols and slid it back over the polished oak wood table. Tim Delaney frowned at me, and she brushed some of her dark, shining hair back from her forehead. She was a tall woman, buxom and lovely in an old-world way, with pale, pretty skin and round cheeks well used to smiling. She wasn't smiling now. "Oh, come on, Harry," she told me. "You're Chicago's only practicing professional wizard, and you're the only one who can help me." She leaned across the table toward me, her eyes intent. "I can't find the references for all these symbols. No one in local circles recognizes them either. You're the only real wizard I've ever even heard of, much less know. I just want to know what those others are." "No," I told her. "You don't want to know. You're better off forgetting the circle and concentrating on something else." "But," Matt caught my attention from behind the bar by waving a hand at me, and slid a couple of plates of steaming food onto the polished surface of the crooked oak bar. He added a couple of bottles of his homemade brown ale, and my mouth started watering. My stomach made an unhappy noise. It was almost as empty as my wallet. I would never have been able to afford dinner tonight, except that Kim had offered to buy if I had talked to her about something during the meal. A steak dinner was less than my usual rate, but she was pleasant company and sometime apprentice of mine. I knew she didn't have much money, and I had even less. Despite my rumbling stomach, I didn't rise immediately to pick up the food. In McNally's Pub and Grill, there aren't any service people. According to Mac, if you can't get up and walk over to pick up your own order, you don't need to be there at all. I looked around the room for a moment with its annoying combination of low ceilings and lazily spinning fans, its 13 carved wooden columns, and its 13 windows, plus 13 tables arranged haphazardly to defray and scatter the residual magic effects that sometimes surrounded hungry, in other words, angry, wizards. McNally's was a haven in a town where no one believed in magic. A lot of the crowd ate there. "Look, Harry," Kim said, "I'm not using this for anything serious, I promise. I'm not trying any summoning or binding. It's an academic interest only. Something that's been bothering me for a while." She leaned forward and put her hand over mine, looking me in the face without looking me in the eyes, a trick that few practitioners of the art could master. She grinned and showed me the deep dimples in her cheeks. My stomach growled, and I glanced over at the food on the bar waiting for me. "You sure?" I asked her. "This is just you trying to scratch an itch. You're not using it for anything." "Cross my heart," she said, doing so. I frowned. "I don't know." She laughed at me. "Oh, come on, Harry. It's no big deal. Look, if you don't want to tell me, never mind. I'll buy you dinner anyway. I know you're tight for money lately, since that thing last spring, I mean. By the way, just as a fair aside, no sound alerts, blurps, or other interruptions will work on this scene, so just don't waste your blurt points or anything. I just wanted to give y'all a heads up." I glowered, but not at Kim. It wasn't her fault that my main employer, Karen Murphy, the director of special investigations at the Chicago Police Department, hadn't called me in for consulting work for more than a month. Most of my living for the past few years had come from serving as a special consultant to SI. But after a frat call last spring involving a dark wizard fighting a gang war for control of Chicago's drug trade, work with SI had slowly tapered off, and with it, my income. I didn't know why Murphy hadn't been calling me as often. I had my suspicions, but I hadn't gotten the chance to confront her about them yet. Maybe it wasn't anything I'd done. Maybe the monsters had gone astray. Yeah, right. The bottom line was I was strapped for cash. I'd been eating ramen noodles and soup for too many weeks. The steaks Mac had prepared smelled like heaven even from across the room. My belly protested again, growling its Neolithic craving for charred meat. But I couldn't just go and eat the dinner without giving Kim the information she wanted. It's not that I've ever welched on a deal, but I've never done it with anyone human, and definitely not with someone who looked up to me. Sometimes I hate having a conscience and a stupidly thorough sense of honor. All right, I sighed. Let me get the dinner and I'll tell you what I know. Kim's round cheeks dimpled again. Thanks, Harry. This means a lot to me. Yeah, I told her, and got up to weave my way toward the bar, through columns and tables and so on. McNally's had more people than usual tonight, and though Mac rarely smiled, there was a contentment in his manner that indicated that he was happy with the crowd. I snatched at the plates and bottles with a somewhat petulant attitude. It's hard to take much joy in a friend's prosperity when your own business is about to go under. I took the food, steaks and potatoes and green beans, back to the table and sat down again, placing Kim's plate in front of her. We ate for a while, myself in sullen silence, and she in hearty hunger. So, Kim said finally, what can you tell me about that? She gestured toward the piece of paper with her fork. I swallowed my food, took a sip of the rich ale, and picked up the paper again. All right, this is a figure of high magic. 3 of them, really, one inside the other, like layered walls. Remember what I told you about about magical circles? Kim nodded. They either hold something out or keep it in. Must work on magic energies or creatures of the Never. Most work. But mortal creatures can cross the circles and break them. Right, I said. This is what this outermost circle of symbols is. It's a barrier against creatures with spirit and magical forces. These symbols here, and here are the key ones. I pointed out the squiggles in question. Kim nodded eagerly. I got the outer one. What's next? The second circle is more of a spell barrier to mortal flesh. It wouldn't work if all you used was a ring of symbols. You'd need something else, stones, gems, or something, spaced between the drawings. I took another bite of steak. Kim frowned at the paper, then at me. And then what would I do? Invisible wall, I told her, like bricks. Spirits, magic could go right through it, but mortal flesh couldn't. Neither could a thrown rock, bullets, or anything purely physical. I see, she said, it's sort of a force field. I nodded, something like that. Her cheeks glowed with excitement and her eyes shone. I knew it, and what's the last one? I squinted at the innermost ring of symbols, frowning. A mistake. What do you mean? I mean it's just gobbledygook. It doesn't mean anything useful. Are you sure you copied this correctly? Kim's mouth twisted in a frown. I'm sure I was careful. I studied her face for the moment. If I read the symbols correctly, it's a third wall, built to withhold creatures of flesh and spirit, neither mortal nor spirit, but somewhere in between. She frowned. What kind of creatures are like that? I shrugged. None, I said. And officially it was true. The White Council of Wizards did not allow the discussion of demons that could be called to earth, beings of spirit that could gather flesh to themselves. Usually a spirit circle was enough to stop all but the most powerful demons or elder things of the outer reaches of the Never. But this third circle was built to stop things that could transcend those kinds of boundaries. It was a cage for demonic demigods and archangels. Kim wasn't buying my answer. I don't see why anyone would make a circle like this to contain nothing, Harry. I shrugged. People don't always do reasonable, sensible things. They're like that. She rolled her eyes at me. Come on, Harry. I'm not a baby. You don't have to shelter me. And you, I told her, don't need to know what kind of thing that third circle was built to contain. You don't want to know. Trust me. She glowered at me for a long moment, then sipped her ale and shrugged. All right, circles have to be empowered, right? You have to know how to switch them on like lights. Something like that, sure. How would a person turn this one on? I stared at her for a long time. Harry, she asked, you don't need to know that either. Not for an academic interest. I don't know what you've got in mind, Kim, but leave it alone. Forget it. Walk away before you get hurt. Harry, I'm not... Save it, I told her. You're sitting on a tiger cage, Kim. I thumped a finger on the paper for emphasis. And you wouldn't need it if you weren't planning to try to stick a tiger in there. Her eyes glittered and she lifted her chin. You don't think I'm strong enough. Your straight's got nothing to do with it, I said. You don't have the training. You don't have the knowledge. I wouldn't expect a kid in grade school to be able to sit down and figure out college calculus. And I don't expect it of you either. I leaned forward. You don't know enough yet to be toying with this sort of thing, Kim. And even if you did manage to become a full-fledged wizard, I'd still tell you not to do it. You mess this up and you could get a lot of people hurt. If I was planning to do that, it's my business, Harry. Her eyes were bright with anger. You don't have the right to choose for me. No, I told her. I've got the responsibility to help you make the right choice. I curled the paper in my fingers and crushed it, then tossed it aside to the floor. She stabbed her fork into a cut of steak, a sharp, vicious gesture. Look, Kim, I said. Give it some time. When you're older, when you've got more experience. You aren't so much older than me, Kim said. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. I've had a lot of training, and I started young. My own ability with magic, far in excess of my years in education, wasn't a subject I wanted to explore, so I tried to shift the direction of the conversation. How's this fall's fundraiser going? It's not, she said. She leaned back wearily in her seat. I'm tired of trying to pry money out of people to save the planet they're poisoning or the animals they're killing. I'm tired of writing letters and doing marches for causes no one believes in anymore. She rubbed her eyes. I'm just tired. Look, Kim, try to get some rest, and please don't play with that circle. Promise me. She tossed her napkin down, left a few bills on the table, and stood up. Enjoy your meal, Harry, she said, and thanks for nothing. I stood up as well. Kim, I said, wait a minute. But she ignored me. She stalked off toward the door, her skirt swaying along with her long hair. She cut an impressive, statuesque figure. I could feel the anger bubbling off of her. One of the ceiling fans shuddered and let out a puff of smoke as she walked under it and then whirled down to a halt. She raced up the short flights of stairs and exited the bar, banging the door shut behind her. People watched her leave, then glanced back to me, speculation on their faces. I sat back down, frustrated. Damn it, Kim was one of the several people I had coached through the difficult period surrounding the discovery of their innate magic talents. It made me feel like crap to withhold information from her, but she had been playing with fire. I couldn't let her do that. It was my responsibility to help protect her from such things until she knew enough to realize how dangerous they were. To say nothing of what the White Council would think of a non-wizard toying with major summoning circles. The White Council didn't take chances with things like that. They just acted decisively, and they weren't always particular about people's lives and safety when they did it. I had done the right thing. Keeping that kind of information out of Kim's hands had been the right decision. I had been protecting her from danger she couldn't fully appreciate. I had done the right thing, even if she trusted me to provide answers for her as I had in the past when teaching her to contain and control her modest magical talents, even if she had trusted me to show her the answers she needed to be her guide through the darkness. I'd done the right thing. Damn it. My stomach was soured. I didn't want any more of Mac's delicious meal, steak or no steak. I didn't feel like I earned it. I was sipping down thinking dark thoughts when the door opened again. I didn't look up, occupied as I was with brooding. A famous pastime of wizards everywhere, and then a shadow fell over me. Sitting here pouting, Murphy said. She bent over and absently picked up the wadded scrap of paper I'd tossed aside earlier, tucking it tidily in her coat pocket rather than letting it lie about as clutter on the floor. That's not much like you, Harry. I glanced up at Murphy. I didn't have far to look. Karen Murphy wasn't much more than 5 feet tall. She had gotten her golden hair cut from shoulder length to something far shorter, and a little longer in the front than back. It was a punky sort of look, and very appealing with her blue eyes and upturned nose. She was dressed for the weather in what might have been her at-home clothes, dark jeans, a flannel shirt, hiking boots, and a heavy woodsman's jacket. She was wearing her badge on her belt. Murphy was extremely cute for a grown adult who also held a black belt in Aikido and had several marksmanship awards from the Chicago PD. She was a real professional, one who had fought and clawed her way up the ranks to become full lieutenant. She had made enemies along the way, and one of them had seen to it that she was put in charge of special investigations soon after. Hello there, Murphy, I told her. I took a swig of ale and said, Long time no see. I tried to keep my voice even, but I'm pretty sure she heard the anger in it. Look, Harry, did you read the editorial in the Tribune, the one criticizing you for wasting the city's money hiring a charlatan psychic named Harry Dresden? I guess you must have, since I haven't heard from you since it came out. She rubbed at the bridge of her nose. I don't have time for this. I ignored her. Not that I blame you. Not many of the good taxpayers of Chicago believe in magic or wizards. Of course, not many of them have seen what you and I have. You know, when we worked together or when I was saving your life. Her eyes tightened at the edges. I need you. We've got a situation. You need me. We haven't talked for more than a month, and you need me all of a sudden? I've got an office and a telephone and everything, Lieutenant. You don't need to track me down here while I'm having dinner. I'll tell the killer to be sure to operate during business hours next time, Murphy said, but I need you to help me find him. I straightened in my chair, frowning. There's been a murder, something in my field? Murphy flashed a hard smile at me. I hope you didn't have anything more important to do. I felt my jaw grow tense. No, I'm ready. I stood up. Well then, she said, turning and walking away. Shall we go? If you ever hear me take a break in between chapters, or take a break while I'm reading, it's because I'm hydrating. Meh. Chapter 2. Murphy declined to ride in the Blue Beetle, my old Volkswagen Bug. The Beetle wasn't really blue, not anymore. One of the doors had been replaced with a green duplicate. The other one was white, when something with claws that had shredded the originals. The hood had been slagged by fire, and my mechanic, Mike, had replaced it with a hood from a red vehicle. The important thing is that the Beetle runs, even if it doesn't do it very fast, and I'm comfortable with the car. Mike has declared that the VW Bug is the easiest car in the world to repair, and so that's what I drive. He keeps it running 8 or 9 days in 10, and that's phenomenal. Technology tends to foul up around Wizards. Flip on a light switch, and it'll be the time the bulb burns out. Drive past a street light, and it'll pick just then to flicker and die. Whatever can go wrong will, automobiles included. I didn't think it made much sense for Murphy to risk her vehicle when she could have taken mine, but she said she'd take her chances. She didn't speak as she drove her Saturn down the JFK out toward Rosemont. I watched her, uncomfortable as we went. She was in a hurry, taking far too many chances cutting in and out of traffic, and I put on my seatbelt. At least we weren't on her motorcycle. Murph, I asked her, where's the fire? She glanced aside at me. I want you out there before some other people show up. Press? I couldn't quite keep a nasty slur out of the word. She shrugged. Whoever. I frowned at her, but she didn't say anything else, which seemed typical. Murphy didn't speak much to me anymore. We rode the rest of the way in silence, exited JFK, and pulled into the parking lot of a half-completed little strip mall. We got out of the car. A jet came in, low, heading for O'Hare International Airport, only a few miles to the west. I squinted at it for a moment, then frowned at Murphy as a uniformed officer led us toward a building surrounded by police tape. There was an abundance of light, the moon overhead bright and silver, and almost a completely round circle. I cast an enormous gangly shadow as I walked, my duster flapping around my legs. I towered beside Murphy, her far smaller shadow ahead of me. Murphy, I said, are we outside Chicago city limits? Yeah, Murphy said shortly. Then aren't we out of your jurisdiction, technically? People need help where they can get it, Dresden, and the last several killings happened in Chicago, so we want to look at this firsthand. I already worked things out with the local force. It's not really an issue. Several killings? I said several, as in more than one. Murphy, slow down. But she didn't. Instead, she led me to a roomy building that proved to be under construction. Though all the exterior work was finished, some of the windows were still covered with board. I didn't see the sign on the building's front door till I got close. The Varsity? I said, reading it. I thought Marcone burned it down last spring. Murphy said, glancing at me over her shoulder. Relocated and rebuilding. Chicago's resident crime lord, gentleman Johnny Marcone, was the robber baron of the mean streets. He kept all the rough business inside the city proper, leaving his legitimate interests out there in the suburbs, like here in Rosemont. Last spring, when I confronted him in his club, a previous incarnation of the Varsity, about a deadly new drug on the streets, the place had wound up burning to the ground. After the whole mess was over, word got out that the drug dealer I'd taken out had been Marcone's enemy, and that I had nuked him at the crime lord's request. I hadn't refuted the rumor. It was easier to let people talk than to force Marcone to make an issue of things. Inside the building, the floors were rough, unfinished. Someone had turned on a couple of halogen work lights, and they would cast the interior into brilliant, clear white light. There was drywall dust everywhere. There were a few card tables set up with workman's tools left out on them in places, plastic buckets of paint, tarps, and a sack of new paintbrushes waited for use off to one side. I didn't notice the blood until Murphy put her arm out in front of me to keep me from walking into it. Wake up, Dresden, she said, and her voice was grim. I stopped and looked down. Blood. A lot of blood. It began near my feet, where a long spatter had reached out like an arm from a drowning man, staining the dusty floor with scarlet. My eyes followed the path of the long blood stain back to a pool maybe an eighth of an inch deep, surrounding a mound of ripped cloth and torn meat that must have been the corpse. My stomach quailed, threatening to eject bites of steak I had taken earlier that evening, but I forced it down. I walked into a circle around the body, keeping my distance. The corpse was, I guessed, that of a male in his 30s. He had been a large man with a short, spiky haircut. He had fallen on his side, facing away from me. His arms curled up toward his head, his legs up toward his vitals. A weapon, a little automatic pistol, lay 7 or 8 feet away, uselessly out of the victim's reach. I walked around the corpse till I could see the face. Whatever had killed him, it hadn't been human. His face was gone, simply torn away. Something had ripped his lips off. I could see his blood-stained teeth. His nose had been torn all the way up one side, and part of it dangled toward the floor. His head was misshapen, as though some enormous pressure had been put upon his temples, warping his skull in. His eyes were gone, torn out of his head, bitten out. There were the ragged slash marks of fangs around the edges of the sockets. I closed my eyes tightly and took a deep breath. Another, a third. That didn't help. The body stank, a sickly sewer smell that rose up from the torn innards. My stomach wanted to roll up my throat, out my mouth, and onto the floor. I could remember the other details, even with my eyes closed, and catalogued them neatly for better reference. The victim's jacket and shirt had been torn to bloody ribbons along his forearms and indefensive wounds. His hands and arms were a mass of pulp ripped meat, the palms of his fingers slashed to rugged lumps. The curl of his body hid his abdomen from me, but that was where the blood was pooling from, spreading out like ink from a spilled bottle. The stench only confirmed that he had been eviscerated. Let me kill that ad right quick. I turned away from the corpse and opened my eyes, staring down at the floor. "Harry," Murphy said from far side the body. The note of hardness that had been in her voice all evening was absent. She hadn't moved while I had done my cursory examination. "I recognize him," I said. "At least I think I do. You'll need to check dental records or something to be sure." I could hear her frown in her words. "Yeah, who was he?" "I don't know his name. I always called him Spike for the haircut. He was one of Johnny Marcone's bodyguards." Murphy was quiet for a moment and then said succinctly, "Shit." "What, Murph?" I looked back at her without looking down at Spike's mangled remains. Murphy's face was set in concern for me, her blue eyes gentle. I saw her wipe the expression away as quickly as a shadow crosses the floor, a smoothing of lines that left her features neutral. I guess she hadn't expected me to turn to her. "Take a look around a little more," she said. "Then we'll talk." "What am I looking for?" I asked her. "You'll know it," she said, and then added in a whisper that I could think she didn't intend for me to hear. "I hope." I turned back to my work and looked around the room. Off to one side, one of the windows was broken. Near it was a table, lying askew on the floor, its legs warped and bent. I walked over to it. Broken glass littered the ground around the collapsed table. Since the glass was on the inside of the building, something must have come through the window. There was blood on several of the broken pieces of glass. I picked up one of the larger ones and frowned at it. The blood was dark red and not yet wholly dried. I took a white handkerchief from my pocket, folded the shard of glass into it, and then slipped it in my pocket, my duster. I rose and paced over the floor, my eyes downcast, studying the dust. In one spot it was rubbed almost clean off the floor, as though a struggle had taken place there without blood being spilled. In another spot where the halogen lamps didn't quite reach, there was a pool of silver moonlight below a window. I knelt down beside it. In the center of the pool was a paw print in the dust. A paw. The paw spoke, a paw print almost as big as my spread hand, canine. Dots at the tips of the paw spoke of heavy nails, almost claws. I looked through the window at the rounded silver shape of the almost full moon. "Oh, hell," I breathed. "Oh, hell." Murphy came toward me and watched me silently for a moment, waiting. I licked my lips and stood up and turned to her. "You've got problems." "No kidding. Talk to me, Dresden." I nodded, then pointed to the window. "The attacker probably came in there. He went after the victim, attacked him, got the gun away from him, and killed him. It's the attacker's blood on the window. They struggled a while over there by that clean spot, maybe, and Spike made a break for the door. He didn't make it there. He got torn to pieces first." I turned toward Murphy, looking down at her solemnly. "You've had other murders happen in the same way, probably about 4 weeks ago, when the moon was last full. Those were the other killings you were talking about." Murphy glanced at my face for a moment, keeping her eyes off mine, and nodded her head. "Yeah, 4 weeks ago, almost exactly, but no one else picked up the full moon angle, just me." "Uh-huh, then you should see this too," I said. I led her over to the window and showed her the paw print in the dust beneath it. She regarded it in silence. "Harry," she said after a minute, "are there such things as werewolves?" She brushed a strand of her hair back from her cheek, a small, oddly vulnerable gesture. She folded her arms over her stomach and threw it as though she were cold. I nodded. "Yeah, not like you see in the movies, but yeah. I figured that's what you got going here." She drew in a deep breath. All right then. What can you tell me? What do I need to know?" I opened my mouth to speak, but I didn't get a chance to say anything. There was a brief bout of shouting outside, and then the front doors of the building banged open. Murphy tensed, and I saw her mouth set in a hard little line. Her back straightened, and she stopped hugging herself, putting her fists on her hips. "God damn it," she said. "How do those assholes get everywhere so fast?" I stepped forward so that I could see. A quartet of people in suits came through the door, fanned out in almost military diamond formation. The man in the front was quite tall, not quite as tall as me, but still very tall. 6 feet and 3 or 4 inches. His hair was jet black, as were his eyebrows, and while his eyes were a shade of gray as perilous wood smoke. His dark blue suit fit him well, and I had the impression that it concealed an athletic build in spite of the fact that he had obviously seen more than 4 decades. A blue identification badge reading FBI in huge, obnoxious letters dangled from one lapel. "Secure the scene," he said, his voice deep, tense. "Lieutenant Murphy, what the hell are you doing on a crime scene out of your jurisdiction?" "Nice to see you too, Agent Denton," Murphy said in a flat tone. "You get around fast." "I told you you weren't welcome on this investigation," Denton said, his words crisp. His gray eyes flashed, and I saw a vein bulge rhythmically on his forehead. His gaze shifted to me. "Who is this?" I started to say, but Murphy's snort cut over my words. "No one," she said. She flashed me a look that said very clearly, "Shut up." That annoyed the hell out of me. "Harry Dresden," I said, making the words loud and clear. Murphy and I exchanged a glare. "Ah," Denton said, "the charlatan. I've read about you in the Tribune." His clear, tense gaze returned to Murphy. "You and your psychic friend might want to step out of the way. There's police work being done here, the real kind, where we worry about fingerprints, fibers, genetic matches, silly things like that." Murphy's eyes narrowed along with mine, but if the twin glares affected Denton, it didn't show in his face. Murphy and Denton had a brief staring match for her fury against his steely intensity. "Agent Ben," Denton called. A woman not quite into her 30s with a shoulder-length mane of hair gone prematurely gray turned toward us from her intent contemplation of the corpse. She had olive skin, deep green eyes, and a thin, severe mouth. She walked toward us with a sort of hard-muscle sensuality, moving like someone who was incapable of being fast and dangerous when necessary. Of the 4 FBI agents who had entered the room, she was the only one obviously sporting a weapon. Her jacket was unbuttoned, and I could see the straps of her shoulder rigged against the white of her shirt. "Yes, sir," Ben said. Her voice was very quiet. Her eyes took a position midway between Murphy and me, looking at neither of us while watching us both. "Please escort these 2 civilians," Denton stressed the word, "from the crime scene." Ben nodded once but didn't say anything in reply. She just waited. I gathered myself to go but paused. Murphy planted her feet and lowered her arms casually to her sides. I recognized the stubborn, out-thrust angle of her jaw. She had the look she got when she was behind on points in one of her martial arts tournaments. Murphy was ready to fight. Damn, I had to get her cooled off before we could accomplish anything. "Murphy," I said quietly, "can we talk outside?" "Like hell," Murphy said. "Whoever this killer is, he's knocked off a dozen people in the last month. I'm here, and I'm after this man. The Rosemont Department has given me their consent for me to be here." Murphy glared up at Ben. The FBI agent had her by a considerable margin of reach and muscle. I saw Ben's eyes narrow, her shoulders grow tenser. "Do you have that in writing?" Denton demanded. The vein in his head throbbed more angrily. "And do you really think you want me reporting this to your superiors, Lieutenant?" "Don't push me, Denton," Murphy said, her voice hot. I winced. "Look, Murphy," I said. I put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's just go outside for a minute." I squeezed just a little. Murphy turned back toward me. She chanced a brief glance up at my eyes and then relaxed a little, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. She started to ease down, and I let my breath out. I definitely didn't want this dissolving into violence. It wouldn't accomplish anything. "Get them out of here," Denton said, and there was a note to his voice that I didn't like. Ben didn't give us any warning. She just moved, fast and hard, stepping toward Murphy and flicking some sort of martial arts blow I wasn't familiar with toward her temple. There was a quick blur of motion. Murphy's hands got there before the blow landed. She turned somehow, levering Ben's weight off of her legs and slamming the gray-maned woman hard into a wall. Ben's expression went from shock and surprise to furious in the space of half a second. Her hand dipped into her jacket, hesitated for half a second, then resumed motion. She drew her gun with an expert's precision, smooth and quick without seeming hurried. Her green eyes blazed. I threw myself at Murphy, colliding with her and then driving her over and down as the gun went off, louder and with a close clap of thunder in the interior of the half-finished restaurant. We landed on a heap in the dusty floor. Ben, Denton shouted. He lunged for her, heedless of the gun, and got between the armed woman and us. I could hear him talking in her low, urgent voice. "You crazy bitch," I shouted. "What's the matter with you?" The two other FBI guys and several patrol officers from outside came running. Murphy grunted and elbowed me in the gut urgently. I grunted back and moved off of her. Both of us climbed to our feet unhurt. "What the hell happened?" one of the officers, an older man with thinning gray hair, demanded. Denton turned to the officer, calm and cool. "Misfire. There was a misunderstanding and Agent Ben's weapon accidentally discharged." The officer rubbed his scalp and eyed Murphy. "Is that true, Lieutenant?" "Like hell," I said. I pointed a finger at Ben. "This crazy bit." Murphy jammed an elbow in my stomach and glared at me. "That's true," Murphy said while I rubbed at my gut. "It happened just as Agent Denton said. An accident." I stared at her. "Murph, give me a break. This woman had an accident with her weapon," Murphy said, her voice hard. Could have happened to anyone." Murphy turned her glare on the aging officer, and he blinked mildly at her and then shrugged. Denton turned back to us and studied Murphy intently for a second. Then he nodded. "Raj, George, why don't you two make sure the lieutenant is all right and help her to her car?" Sure, Phil," said the skinny kid with red hair, big ears, and freckles. Mr. Dresden, Lieutenant Murphy, why don't we go outside and get some air?" "I'm Roger Harris, and this is Agent Wilson." The other FBI guy, a bulky, overweight man in his late 40s, and his hair receding, his gut overhanging his belt, just beckoned us to follow and walk toward the door. Murphy glared at Denton for a moment and spun on her heel and stalked after the bulky Wilson. I followed her. "I can't believe that. You all right? Why the hell didn't you tell them what she did?" I asked Murphy sotto voce. "That bitch," Murphy said back, not near as quiet. "She tried to sucker punch me." "She tried to ventilate you, Murph," I countered. Murphy let out a breath between her teeth, but kept walking. I glanced back at the room behind us and saw Spike's torn and mangled body being surrounded by more police tape. Forensics had arrived, and the team was sitting to sweep the room. Denton was kneeling down beside Ben, who had her face in her hands and looked as though she were weeping. Denton was watching me, his gray eyes calculating, expressionless, filing me away under tall, slender, dark hair, dark eyes, hawkish features, no visible scars. I stared at him for a minute and got a hunch, a solid intuition of which I was completely sure. Denton was hiding something. He knew something, and he wasn't talking. Don't ask me how I knew it, but something about him, about the way the veins bulged in his forehead, or the way he held his neck stiffly, made me think so. The kid, Harris said. I blinked and turned to him. He opened the door for Murphy and me, and we walked outside, maybe to give Deborah some slack. She's really stressed out about these Lobo killings. She hasn't slept much in the past month. She knew one of the guys who got killed. She's been tense ever since. "Shut up, Harris," the overweight Agent Wilson said, his tone disgusted. "Just shut up." He turned to the two of us and said in a calm voice, "Get the hell out of here. I don't want to see either of you around in a scene that isn't on your turf. Lieutenant Murphy, Internal Affairs has enough to do, don't you think?" He turned and went back into the building. The red-headed kid gave us an apologetic, awkward smile, and then hurried to catch up with the overweight agent. I saw him shoot a glance back at me, his expression thoughtful. Then he was gone, the door shut, leaving Murphy and me on the outside, away from the investigation and the evidence at the crime scene. I looked up through the clear night at the almost full moon, werewolves jumping through windows at gangsters, lackeys, and unfinished restaurants, a mangled corpse in the middle of a blood-drenched floor, berserk FBI field agents drawing guns and shooting to kill, a little kung fu, a little John Wayne, and a few casual threats. So far, I thought, my nerves jangling, just one more night on the job. Let me take another drink. I got a little choked up there. And we'll see how long Chapter 3 is, because apparently Twitch is wanting to do an ad break at some point. It's not long. Chapter 3. My stomach roiled around with disgust at the macabre sights inside the building, with tension at what had nearly happened. One of my ears was still ringing from the sound of the gunshot. I was starting to shake all over, the adrenaline rush fading and leaving me jumpy and wired. I stuck my hands in my duster pockets, careful of the blood-stained shards of glass I wrapped in the handkerchief, and turned my face into the wind, closing my eyes. "Relax, Harry," I told myself. "Calm down, breathe in and out, and you just keep doing it. See, you aren't dead. Dead people don't breathe like that. You aren't Spike, all torn to pieces on the floor. You don't have any bullet holes in you either. You're alive, and Murphy's all right, and you don't have to look at that eyeless face anymore." But I could see the torn body still behind my eyelids. I could smell the ghastly stench of his open innards. I could remember the blood sticky on the dusty floor, congealing thick with tiny flecks of drywall. I tasted bile in my throat and fought to keep from throwing up. I wanted to scream, to run, to wave my arms and kick something till I felt better. I could understand Agent Ben's reaction almost, if she had been working a string of killings like the one I'd just seen. You can't stare at that much blood for very long without starting to see more of it everywhere else. I just keep taking deep breaths in and out. The wind was cool and fresh in my face, sharp with the smells of coming autumn. October evenings in Chicago were chilly, breezy, but I loved them anyway. It's my favorite time of year to be outside. I eventually calmed down. Murphy must have been doing the same thing beside me, making herself relax. We both started walking back toward the car at the same time. No words needed to be passed between us. Murphy began, fell silent again. I didn't look at her, didn't speak. I'm sorry, Harry. I lost control. Agent Denton is an asshole, but he does his job and he was right. Technically speaking, I didn't have any right to be on the scene. I didn't mean to drag you into all this. She unlocked the doors and got in the car. I got in the passenger side, then reached out and plucked the keys from her hand as she began to start the engine. She quirked her head at me. Narrowing her eyes, I closed my hands around the keys. Just sit down and relax for a while, Murph. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea, Harry, she said. This is the thanks I get for saving your life. Twice now you're going to have down on me. You should know how it works, she said, scowling. But she settled back in the seat and looked out the windshield of the car. We could see the police, forensics, and FBI suits moving back and forth inside the building. We were both quiet for a long time. The funny thing was that the problems between Murphy and me came from the same source as the problems with Kim Delaney earlier tonight. Murphy had needed to know something to pursue an investigation. I could have given her the information, but it would have put her in danger to do so. I'd refused to say anything, and when I pursued the trail by myself all the way to its end, there had been some burning buildings and a corpse or two. There wasn't enough evidence to bring charges against me, and the killer we'd been after had been dealt with, but Murphy hadn't ever forgiven me for cutting her out of the loop. In the intervening months, she had called me in for work several times, and I'd given the best service I could, but it had been cool between us, professional. Maybe it's time to try and bridge that gap again. Look, Murph, I said, we've never even really talked about what happened last spring. We didn't talk about it while it was happening, she said, but her tone crisp as autumn leaves. Why should we start now? That was last spring. It's October. Give me a break, Murphy. I wanted to tell you more, but I couldn't. Let me guess. Cat had your tongue, she said sweetly. You know I wasn't one of the bad guys. You have to know that by now. Hell's bells, I risked my neck to save you. Murphy shook her head, staring straight forward. That's not the point. No, then what is? The point, Dresden, is that you lied to me. You refused to give me information that I need to do my job. When I bring you in on one of my investigations, I am trusting you. I don't just go around trusting people. Never have. She took a grip on the steering wheel, her knuckles whitening. Less than ever now. I winced. That stung. What's worse, she was in the right. Some of what I knew, it was dangerous, Murph. It could have gotten you killed. Her blue eyes fixed on me with a glare that made me lean back against the car door. I'm not your daughter, Dresden, she said in a very soft, calm voice. I'm not some porcelain doll on a shelf. I'm a police officer. I catch the bad guys and I put their asses away, and if it comes down to it, I'll take a bullet so that some poor housewife or CPA doesn't have to. She got her gun out of its shoulder holster, checked the ammo in safety, and replaced it. I don't need your protection. Murphy, wait, I said hastily. I didn't do it to piss you off. I'm your friend. Always have been. She looked away from me as an officer with a flashlight walked past the car, shining the light about on the ground. He looked for exterior evidence. You were my friend, Dresden. Now, Murphy shook her head once and set her jaw. Now, I don't know. There wasn't much I could say to that, but I couldn't just leave things there. In spite of all the time that had gone by, I hadn't tried to look at things from her point of view. Murphy wasn't a wizard. She had almost had no knowledge of the world of the supernatural, the world that the great religion of science had been failing to banish since the Renaissance. She had nothing to use against some of the things she encountered, no weapon but the knowledge that I was able to give her, and last spring I had taken that weapon away from her, left her defenseless and unprepared. It must have been hell for Murphy to daily place herself at odds with things that didn't make any sense. Things that made forensics teams just shake their heads. That's what special investigations did. They were a team specially appointed by the mayor of Chicago to investigate all the unusual crimes that happened in the city. Public opinion, the church, and the official policy still frowned at any reference to magic, the supernatural, vampires, or wizards, but the creatures of the spirit world still lurked about. Trolls under bridges, cradle-robbing fairies, ghosts and spooks, and boogers of every kind. They still terrorized and hurt people, and some of the statistics I'd put together indicated that things were only getting worse, not better. Someone had to try to stop it. In Chicago or any of its sprawling suburbs, that person was carrying Murphy and her SI team. She had held the position longer than any of her many predecessors because she had been open to the idea that might be more than was dreamt of in Horatio's books. Because she used the services of the county's only wizard for hire. I didn't know what to say, so my mouth started acting on its own. Karen, I'm sorry. Silence lay between us for a long, long time. She gave a little shiver finally and shook her head. All right, she said, but if I bring you in on this, Harry, I want your word. No secrets this time. Not to protect me, not for anything. She stared out of the window, her features softened in the light of the moon and distant streetlights more gentle. Murphy, I said, I can't promise that. How can you ask me to... Her face flashed with anger, and she reached for my hand. She did something to me, something to one of my fingers that made a quick pain shoot up my arm, and I jerked my hand back by reflex, dropping the keys. She caught them and jammed one of them in the ignition. I winced, shaking my stinging fingers for a moment. Then I covered her hand with mine. Okay, I said, all right. I promise. No secrets. She glanced at me, at my eyes for a breath, and then looked away. She started the car and drove from the parking lot. All right, she said, I'll tell you. I'll tell you because I need every bit of help I can get. Because if we don't nail this thing, this werewolf, we're going to have another truckload of corpses on our hands this month, and... She sighed, and if we don't, I'm going to be out of a job, and you'll probably end up in jail. And I'm going to pause there while the ad break runs. I do apologize. Sadly, it is a necessary evil for us to have the ad breaks, but I tried to avoid it as long as I could. I'm going to take a quick soda drink break. I can't believe I've been reading for 45 minutes. The chapters have been very short, so. But this next one's not. Oh, actually it is. See, the chapters are very short. Let's see how many chapters are there. 34 chapters. Okay, and we're on chapter 4. So 30 chapters, give or take. So for... I might be able to divide that into 3 parts, I think. Give or take. So my goal is 2 hours or 10 chapters, give or take, today. So I hope y'all are enjoying it, though. I'm sorry that we have the ad break. For those of you that are lurking, I do apologize. For those of you that are sub, of course, you have sub-free. You have your ad-free experience. If you would like, and if you are lurking and would like to follow the channel, we do have a nice little follow button. Either on mobile, little heart on mobile, or down on your web page if you're watching via web. Thank you to all the lurkers who are here. I'm not calling you out, I'm just wanting to say hi. And thank you for supporting the channel. If you ever miss one of these story sessions, which I am planning on trying to do every Wednesday, and it may take a slight shift come next month, because I may try to steer away briefly from the main story to something a little more spooky. At least briefly, anyway, for the next couple months. I may do some one-shots or something. Because I really haven't thought that far, I'm not going to lie to you. Because, like I said, if I can do this in like 3 parts, I would finish right at September, which would be ideal. I'd much rather not interrupt the flow of the narrative. But I'm thinking maybe I can find some spooky urban legends or spooky stories to read, like one-shots every week for Spooktember and Spooktober. Which, by the way, is coming up pretty soon. We got about roughly almost a month, roughly 4 weeks anyway. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Yeah, about 3 weeks until September starts. 2.5 if you want to get technical. So it won't be long till we'll be doing spooky games, spooky stories, things, spooky movies, and things of that nature. So it won't be long. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should talk about during the ad break. And the reason I talk during the ad break is mainly because I don't want folks to feel left out. Like I said, if you enjoy the channel, if you're enjoying the content, please, feel free to give me a follow. And if you like it a lot, you can there's always the options to subscribe. But I never ask that of anybody. I just do this because I enjoy it. um, and like, follow and subscribe and all that mess. Also, too, like I said, if you ever miss any of these chapters or stories, I do publish them on YouTube as well. They're too long form for TikTok, so, but they're there as well. So in case you wanted to catch up and read up on some of the other stuff I've read, like Good Omens and Stormfront, they're up on the YouTube channel, which are in my linkies. And pardon me, I'm about to sneeze. Okay, maybe I'm not. Wait. Excuse me. My apologies. I was not. It's like suddenly my nose started twitching, and I'm like, oh crap. Alright, now welcome back from the ad break. Let us continue with the story. I do apologize for that sneeze break. Yes, and I hope you're settled back down with snacks. The ad breaks are good for one thing. It always gives you a quick bathroom break to take during the story. So, hope everyone's settled back down now. Let's continue. Chapter 4. Jail? I said, jail? Hell, Murphy, were you planning on mentioning this to me anytime soon? She shot me an irritated scowl, headlights of cars going the opposite way and the highway flaring across her face. Don't even start with me, Harry. I've had a long month. A dozen questions tried to fight their way out of my mouth. The one that ended up winning was, why didn't you call me on the other killings last month? Murphy turned her eyes back to the road. I wanted to, believe me, but I couldn't. Internal Affairs started writing me about what happened with Marcone and Victor Sells last spring. Someone got the idea that I was in cahoots with Marcone, that I helped murder one of his competitors and took out the three-eye drug ring. And they were poking around pretty hard. I felt an abrupt twinge of guilt because I was on the scene. You had that warrant out for me, and then had it rescinded. And then there was these rumors about me and Marcone after the whole thing was over. Murphy's lips compressed and she nodded. Yeah. And if you'd have tried to tell me about it, it would have been throwing gasoline on the fire. I rubbed at my forehead. And if it would have gotten me looked at, and it would have got me looked at harder too by whoever it was investigating Murphy, she had been protecting me. I hadn't even considered what those rumors Marcone had spread might do to people besides myself. Way to go, Harry. One thing you're not stupid, Dresden. She confirmed. A little naive sometimes, but never stupid. I couldn't turn anything up, but there are enough people who are certain I'm dirty that, along with the people who already don't like me, they could screw me over pretty hard given the chance. That's why you didn't make an issue out of what Agent Ben did. I guess you're trying to keep everything quiet. Right, Murphy said. I'd get ripped open from ass to ears if I ain't got word of me so much as bending the rules, much less tussling with one of their bureau's agents. Believe me, Denton might look like a jerk, but at least he isn't convinced that I'm dirty. He'll play fair. And this is where the killings come in, right? Instead of answering, she cut into the slow lane and slowed to a leisurely pace. I half turned toward her in my seat to watch her better. It was while I did this that I noticed the headlights of another car drift across a couple of lanes of traffic to drop in the slow lane behind us. I didn't say anything about it to Murphy, but kept a corner of my eye on the car. Right, Murphy said, the Lobo killings. They started last month, one night before the full moon. We had a couple of gangbangers torn to pieces down at Rainbow Beach. At first, everyone figured it was an animal attack. Bizarre, but who knew, right? Anyway, it was weird, so they handed the investigation to me. All right, I said, what happened then? The next night, it was a little old lady walking past Washington Park, killed the same way, and it just wasn't right, you know. Our forensics guy hadn't turned up anything useful, so I asked in the FBI. They've got access to resources I can't always get to, high-tech forensic labs, that kind of thing. And you let the gin out of the bottle, I guess, something like that. FBI forensics, the red-headed kid with them, turned up some irregularities in the apparent detention of the attackers. Said that the tooth marks didn't match genuine wolves or dogs. Said that the paw prints we found were off too. Didn't match real wolves. She gave a little shudder and said, that's when I started thinking it might be something else, you know. They figured that someone was trying to make it look like a wolf attack. With this whole wolf motif, someone started calling the perpetrator the Lobo killer. I nodded, frowning. The headlights were still behind us. Just a crazy thought. Have you considered telling them the truth? We might be done with a werewolf here? Murphy sneered. Not a chance. They hire conservatives for jobs at the Bureau, people who don't believe in ghosts, goblins, and all that crap out there that I come to you about. They said that the murders must have been done by some sort of cult or pack of psychos, that they must have furnished themselves with weapons made out of wolf teeth and nails, left synthetic paw prints around. That's why all the marks and tracks were off. I got Carmichael to check up on you, but your answering service said you were in Minnesota on a call. Yeah, someone saw something in a lake, I confirmed. What happened after that? All hell broke loose. 3 bums in Burnham Park the next night, and they weren't just dead, they were shredded. Worse than that, the guy tonight. And on the last night of the full moon, an old man outside a liquor store. Then the night after that, we had a businessman and his driver turned up in a parking garage. IA was right there breathing down my neck the whole time, too. Observing everything. She shook her head with a grimace. That last victim, all the others were outside and in a bad part of town. Businessman in a parking garage doesn't fit that pattern. Yeah, Murphy said. James Harding the third, one of the last red-hot industrialists, and he and John Marcone are business partners in some development projects in the Northwest. And tonight we have another victim linked to Marcone. Yeah, Murphy nodded. I'm not sure what's scarier, thinking that these are just regular animal attacks, that they're being done by a bunch of psychos with knives edged with wolf teeth, or that they're organized werewolves. She let out a strained little laugh. That still sounds crazy even to me. Yes, Your Honor, the victim was killed by a werewolf. Let me guess, after the full moon it got quiet. Murphy nodded. I wrapped up its inconclusive findings, and nothing much else happened. No one else died until tonight. And we've got 4 more nights of bright moonlight left, if whoever they are sticks to their pattern. You're sure there's more than one? I asked. Yeah, Murphy said there's bite marks or bite-like marks, according to Agent Dutton, from at least 3 different weapons. As far as all the lab guys are concerned, it could be multiple perpetrators, but there's no way for forensics to be sure, unless it's real werewolves we're dealing with, in which case each set of marks goes with a different set of teeth, and we're looking for a pack. Murphy nodded. But there's no way I'm just going to come out and tell them that. That would put nails in my career's coffin. I said, this is the part where you tell me about your job being in danger. She grimaced. They only need a good reason to get rid of me now. If I don't catch these guys, whoever they are, politics will hang me out to dry. After that, it'll be simple for them to get some charges going on me for complicity or obstruction, and they'll probably try to get you too, Harry. We've got to catch the killer or killers around history. You ever get any blood or hair from the scenes? I asked. Yes, some, Murphy said. What about saliva? Murphy frowned at me. Saliva, it would be in the bite wounds. She shook her head. If they found it, no one has said anything. Besides, all the samples won't do us a lot of good without a suspect to match them against. It won't do you a lot of good, I correct her. Something's left blood on the window when it came through. Maybe that'll turn something up. Murphy nodded. That would be great. Okay, Harry, so you know what's going on now. What can you tell me about werewolves? I pursed my lips for a minute. Not much. They weren't even anything I studied too hard. I can tell you that they're not what they're not, mostly. Give me until morning, though, and I'll put you together a full report on them. I glanced out the back window as Murphy pulled off the JFK Expressway. The car that I thought had been following us exited as we did. Murphy frowned. Morning? Can you do it any sooner? I can have it on your desk by 8 earlier if you tell the night sergeant to let me in. Murphy sighed and rubbed her eyes. Okay, fine. We got back to McNally's, and she pulled in next to the Blue Beetle. Behind us, the car that had been following us also came into the parking lot. Jesus, Harry, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you about werewolves killing people in downtown Chicago. She turned her face to me, her eyes anxious. Tell me I'm not going nuts. I got out of the car, but leaned down to the window. I don't think you're going nuts, Murph. I don't know, but maybe the FBI is right. Maybe it's not werewolves. Crazy things happen sometimes. I gave her half a smile, but she answered with a faint snort. I'll probably be in my office dress, and she said, have that report on my desk by morning. And then she pulled out of the parking lot, turning quickly out into the street. I didn't get into the Beetle. Instead, I watched the car that had followed us into the parking lot. It cruised around the far side of the lot and then started down the road toward me and kept on going. The driver, a striking woman with shaggy dark brown hair peppered with gray, did not turn to look at me as she went past. I watched the car go, frowning. It left the lot, turning the opposite way Murphy had, and vanished from sight. Had that been the same vehicle that had followed us down the JFK, or had it only been my imagination? My gut told me that the woman in the car had been following me, but then again my instincts cried wolf before. I got into the Blue Beetle and thought for a minute. It It was feeling guilty and a little queasy still. It was my fault Murphy had gotten in trouble. I had put her in the middle of extremely questionable circumstances by not telling her what was going on last spring. The pressure she was under now was my responsibility. I have what might be considered a very out-of-date and chauvinist attitude about women. I like to treat women like ladies. I like to open doors for them, pay for the meal if I'm on a date. Bring flowers, dry out the seat for them, all that sort of thing. I guess I could call it an attitude of chivalry, if I thought more of myself. Whatever you called it, Murphy was a lady in distress, and since I'd put her there, it only seemed right that I should get her out of trouble, too. That wasn't the only reason I wanted to stop the killings. Seeing Spike torn up like that had scared the hell out of me. I was still shaking a little, a pure and primitive reaction to a very primal fear. I did not want to get eaten by an animal, chewed up by something that left with a lot of sharp teeth, and the very thought of that made me curl up in my car seat and hug my knees to my chest, an awkward position considering my height and comparatively cramped confines of the beetle. What had happened to Spike was as brutal and violent a death as anyone could possibly have. Maybe the thug had deserved it, maybe not. Either way, he was only one victim of many that had been torn apart by something that regular people shouldn't have to face. I couldn't just stand aside and do nothing. I'm a wizard. That means I have power, and power and responsibility go hand in hand. I have a responsibility to use the power I've been given when there's a need for it. The FBI was not in any sense prepared to deal with a pack of ravening werewolves stalking down victims in the midst of Chicago autumn. This was more my department. I let out a long breath and sat up again. I reached into my industrious pockets for car keys and found the shard of glass wrapped up in my white handkerchief. I unwrapped it slowly and found the blood-smeared glass still there. Blood has a kind of power. I could use the blood, cast a spell that would let me follow the blood back to the person who had spilled it. I could find the killer tonight, simply let my magic lead me to him or them, but it would have to be now. The blood was almost dry, and once it was, I would have a hell of a lot more trouble using it. Murphy would be royally pissed off if I took off without her. She would probably assume that I had intended to follow the trail tonight, purposely leaving her out of the loop, but if I didn't follow the trail, I'd lose the chance to stop the killer before another night fell. It didn't take me long to make up my mind. In the end, saving lives was more important than keeping Murphy from being pissed off at me. So I got out of the Beetle and opened the storage trunk at the front of the VW. I took out a few wizardly implements, my blasting rod and the replacement for my shield bracelet, and one other thing that no wizard should be without, a Smith & Wesson 38 Chief Special. I carried all these things back to the front of the car with me and got out the shard of glass with smeared blood, and then I made with the magic. Another sip. I'm just checking over things. Chapter 5. I got out the lump of chalk I was keeping in my duster pocket and the circular plastic dome compass that rides a strip of Velcro on my dashboard, and then squatted down in my voluminous coat spreading out over my legs and ankles. I drew a rough circle upon the asphalt around me with the chalk. The markings were bright against the dark surface and almost glowed beneath the light of the nearly full moon. I added an effort of will, a tiny investment of energy to close the circle, and immediately felt the ambient magic in the air around me crowd inward, trapped within the confines of the design. The hairs on the nape of my neck prickled and stood on end. I shivered, and I took that shard of glass with its swiftly drying bloodstain and laid it down in the circle between the toes of my boots. I began a low little chain of nonsense syllables, relaxing, focusing my mind on the effect I wanted. Intrasarium, I murmured, and touched the plastic dome of the compass to the damp blood. Energy rushed out of me, swirled within the focusing confines of the circle I had drawn, then rushed downward to the compass with a visible shimmer of silver, dust-like motes. The compass needle shuddered and spun wildly, then the swing to the bloodstain on the dome like a hound picking up a scent. Then it whirled about and pointed to the southeast, whipping around the circle to hover steadily in that direction. I grinned in anticipation and smudged the chalk with my boot, releasing the remaining straight energy back into the air, and then took up the compass and returned to the Blue Beetle. The problem with this particular spell was that the compass needle would point unerringly at whomever the blood had come from until the sun rose the next morning and disrupted the simple magical energies I'd used to make the spell, but it didn't point out the swiftest way to get to the target, only the direct direction where he, she, or it lay. Traffic in Chicago isn't ever what any sane person would call friendly or simple, but I had lived there for a while and had learned to survive. I drove past Cook County Hospital, a virtual city of its own inside Chicago, and down past Douglas Park, then turned south on Kinsey. The compass needle slowly aligned to pinpoint hard to the east as I traveled south, and I wound up turning east on 55th toward the University of Chicago and Lake Michigan. Sorry, I swallowed my own spit. It wasn't exactly a good part of town. In fact, as neighborhoods go in Chicago, it was pretty bad. There was a high crime rate, and a lot of the buildings were run down, abandoned, and only infrequently used. Street lights were out in a lot of places, or when night closed in, it was darker than most areas. It's always been a favorite haunt for some of the darker things that come crawling out of the Never Never for a night on the town. Trolls lurked about like muggers some nights, and any new vampire that came through the city always ended up in this neighborhood, or one like it, searching for prey until he could make contact with Bianca or one of the lesser vampire figures of the city. I pulled over as the compass swung to point at what looked like an abandoned department store, and I killed the engine. The faithful beetle rattled to a grateful halt. I got the map of the city out of the glove box and squinted at it for a moment. Washington Park and Burnham Park, where 4 of the last month's deaths had taken place, were less than a mile away on either side of me. I felt a little shiver run through me. This sure as hell looked like the place to find Murphy's Lobo killer. I got out of the car, I kept the blasting rod in my right hand and the dashboard compass in my left. My shield bracelet dangled on my left wrist, my gun was in the left pocket of my duster within easy reach. I took a moment to take a deep breath to clear my mind and clarify what I wanted to do. I wasn't here to bring the killer down, whoever he was. I was just locating him for Murphy. Murphy could put the guy under surveillance and nail him the next time he tried to move. Even if I did capture Murphy, couldn't exactly bring him up on charges, based on the word of a professional wizard. Municipal judges would love having a cop appear before them and start spouting such crazy talk. I spun my blasting rod around my fingers, grinned, and started forward. That was all right. I didn't need the justice system to recognize my power to be able to use it. There were boards over the front windows of the once department store. I tested each one as I went past and found that one swung in easily. I stopped and examined it carefully, wary of any alarms that might be attached to it, such as the string tied across the bottom, lined with little jingle bells. If I had pushed the wooden sheet any further inward, I would have set it to jangling. Instead, I slipped the string off the head of one of the nails it hung by, lowered the bells carefully, and stepped inside the dim confines of the abandoned store. It was a skeletal place. There were still the homes of shelves, forming long aisles, but now bare of merchandise. Empty fluorescent light fixtures dangled in forlorn rows from the ceiling, and the powdered glass of shattered tubular bulbs dusted the floor beneath them. Light seeped in from the street, mostly moonlight, but more light came from the back of the store. I checked my blood-stained compass. The needle was pointing firmly toward the light. I closed my eyes and listened. A skill that isn't hard to pick up, but that most people don't know how to do anymore. I heard voices, at least a pair of them, talking in hushed, urgent tones. I crept toward the back of the store, using the barren shelves to keep myself from being seen. Then I held my breath and peeked up over the top of the last row of shelves. Gathered around an old Coleman lantern were several people, all young, of various shapes and sizes in both genders. At the time, this was before. Remember, this is written a long time ago, quite a while ago. So, let's see. Does it actually give an actual? Let's see. It was written in 2001. So. They were dressed all in shades of black, and most wore jackets and bracelets and collars of dark leather. Some had earrings and nose rings, and one had a tattoo showing on his throat. If they had been tall, muscular folk, they would have looked intimidating, but they weren't. They looked like college students or younger. Some still with acne and too oily hair, beards that wouldn't quite grow all the way in, and the thinness of youth. They looked awkward and out of place. 4 or 5 of them were gathered behind and around a stout young man less than 5.5 feet tall. He had thick glasses and pudgy fingers, and would have looked more at home with a pocket protector than with a spiked leather glove on his fingers. He stood with his hands on his hips, glaring up at a rail-thin blonde girl who at least a head taller than he. The lines of her willowy body all awkward, her long, sad face set an expression of anger. Her hair fell about her face and head in a ragged mane, but her eyes sparkled with a contained wrath. Another 5 or 6 of the young people were gathered behind her, and everyone seemed tense. "And I'm telling you," the young man snarled in a muted voice, that we should be out there right now. We can't allow ourselves to rest until we've found them all and torn them apart." There was a murmur of agreement from the people behind him. I swear, Billy the Bond said, you are such a testosterone-laden idiot. If we were out there right now, they might catch one of us. Use your head, Georgia, Billy snapped. You think they haven't figured it out by now? They could take all of us out right this minute if they hit us? They haven't, Georgia pointed out. She told us not to move again tonight, and I'm not moving, and if you try it, so help me God, I'm going to tie your ankles to your ears. Billy growled, although it sounded posed and forced, and stepped forward. You think you can handle me, bitch? She said. Bring it on. George's eyes narrowed. I didn't sign on for this wolf thing to fight hapless losers like you, Billy. Don't make me start now. She glared at the young people standing behind Billy. You know what she told us. Are you going to start going up against her word? Listen, Alphas, Billy said, turning to look at those behind him and then at those backing his opponent. I've led you for all this time. I've done as I promised to do. Are you going to stop trusting me? I peered at the discussion, then lowered my head again back into the shadows. Holy, I was a teenage werewolf, Batman. I checked my compass. It pointed firmly into the lit room. The group gathered around the lantern. Were these the killers? They looked more like a group of computer nerds geared up for leather night. Sorry. It was a start, at least. I could clear out now and let Murphy know what I'd seen. I'd need to check around the building outside first, see if any of the group had any cars parked nearby to be able to give Murphy license plate numbers. Hell, we weren't far from the university. Maybe some of them would have parking passes. What's the meaning of this? Came a clear, strident woman's voice. I craned my neck up over the edge of the shelf again. A dark complected woman, as tall as the long-faced blonde, but older, solid with muscle and moving with an animal surety, had come into the room from a back door. Her brown hair was peppered with gray, and it took me only a second to recognize the woman from the car in the parking lot outside of McNally's. My heart started to pound a little more quickly with excitement. She had been following Murphy and me, after all. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. She glared at the two groups of young people, her eyes an almost eerie shade of amber that could be construed as brown. Have I taught you no better? The woman demanded. Billy and Georgia were both looking down at the floor uncomfortably. The other young people had assumed similar positions, like a group of children caught planning to go out after curfew. This isn't a game. Someone followed me here. They're on to us. If you start making mistakes now, you'll pay for them with your life, the woman said, stalking back and forth around the group. I checked my compass. The needle swung back and forth as she walked, pointing solidly at her. My heart leapt in my throat. I considered this woman, with her almost animal vitality, her commanding presence and force of will. This woman, I thought, might be a killer, and she knew she had been followed. How? How in the hell she'd known I was after her? I looked up at her again, excited only to find her staring intently at the thick patch of shadows around the shelves I hid behind. One of the young people started to say something, and the woman raised her hand for silence. I saw her nostrils flare as she breathed in through her nose, and she took a step in my direction. I held my breath, not daring to duck back down behind the shelves, lest the motion give me away. Join hands, snapped the woman. Now! And then she turned to the Coleman lantern on the floor and snuffed it out, plunging the room into blackness. There was a moment of confused murmuring, a commanding hiss from the woman. Then there was nothing but silence, and the sound of shoes and boots moving over the tiles toward the back of the store. They were getting away. I rose, blind, and headed around the shelves toward them as quickly as I could, trying to follow. In retrospect, it wasn't the smartest decision, but I knew that I couldn't afford to let them get away. The spell I'd drawn on my compass wouldn't last long. Not long enough to find the woman again, and much less her pack of young people. I wanted to follow them out to get the license plates of the cars, anything that would let me help Murphy locate them after they had run. I miscalculated the length of my stride and bounced into the wall at the end of the aisle. I sucked in a hiss of pain and reoriented myself, following them, using the darkness to conceal me as much as they did. I could have made some light for myself, but as long as no one could see, no one would start shooting either, I reasoned. I moved out carefully, listening and following the sounds. I had only a second's warning. The sound of claws sliding on old tile, then something large and furry slammed into my legs below the knee, taking them out from under me and sending me heavily to the floor. I let out a shout and swung my blasting rod like a baseball bat, feeling it crack down solidly on something hard and bony. There was a snarl, a deep animal sound, and something tore the rod from my hand and sent it flying away. It clattered hollowly on the tile floor. I dropped my compass, scrabbled for my gun, and got my feet underneath me, backpedaling, yelling my fear out into a wordless challenge. I stood still for a moment, staring at nothing, breathing hard, my gun heavy in my hand. Fear had made my heart pound, and as always, anger followed hard on the heels of fear. I was furious that I had been attacked. I'd half expected something to try to stop me, but in the dark, whatever had been snarling had scared me a lot more than I thought it would. Nothing happened after a minute, and I couldn't hear anything. I reached into my shirt and drew out the silver pentacle that had been my mother's. The 5-pointed star upright within a circle, a symbol of order, symmetry, balance of power. I focused my will on it, concentrating. The pentacle began to glow with a faint, gentle light, hardly the blinding luminescence that came as the result of focusing power against the being of the Never Never, but adequate enough to navigate by at least. I moved toward the back room. Blue-white light like moonlight pulled around me. It was definitely stupid to keep going forward, but I was angry, furious enough to bumble my way through the back room of the department store until I saw the dark blue outline of an open doorway. I headed for it, tripping over a few more things along the way that I couldn't quite make out in the wear light of my amulet, angrily kicking a few things from the path of my feet until I emerged into an alley behind the old building, breathing open air, able to see in dim shapes and colors. Something hit me heavily from behind, driving me to the ground, gravel digging in my ribs through my shirt. My concentration vanished with the light of my amulet. I felt something hard and metallic shoved against the back of my skull. A knee pressed in small on my back, and a woman's voice snarled, "Drop the gun or I'll blow your head off." I'm just taking another sip. Sorry about that. Chapter 6. Call me crazy, but I'm not big on defiance when I've got a gun rammed against my skull. I carefully set the .38 in my left hand down and moved my fingers away from it. "Hands behind your back. Do it," snarled the woman. I did it, and I felt the cold metal of the handcuffs around my wrist, heard the ratcheting sound of the cuffs closing around them. The knee lifted off my back, and my attacker shoved me over with one leg, snapped on a flashlight, and shone in my eyes. "Harry?" she said. I blinked and squinted against the light. I recognized the voice. "Now, hey, Murphy, this is going to be one of those conversations, isn't it?" "You jerk," Murphy said, her voice harsh. She was still only a shadow behind the flashlight, but I recognized the contours now. "You found a lead and followed it, and you didn't contact me." "Those who live in glass houses, Lieutenant," I said, and sat up, my hair still held tightly behind my back. There wasn't time. It was hot, and I couldn't afford to wait on it, or I might have lost it. Murphy grunted. "How'd you find this place?" "I'm a wizard," I told her, and waggled my arms as I could. "Magic, what else?" Murphy growled and hunkered down behind me and unlocked the cuffs. I rubbed at my wrist after they were freed. "How about you?" "I'm a cop," she said. "A car tailed us back to McNally's from the murder scene. I waited till it was gone and followed it back here." She stood up again. "You were inside. Did anyone get out the front?" "No, I don't think so, but I couldn't see." "Damn it," Murphy said. She put her gun away in her coat. "They didn't come out the back. There must be some way up to the roof." She stood up and peered around the closely packed buildings, shining her flashlight around the roof's edge. They had long gone by now. "Been sun loose some." I got to my feet. "Like hell," she said, and turned and started into the building. I hurried to catch up with her. "Where are you going?" "Inside, to look for stairs, a ladder, whatever." You can't follow them," I said. Falling a step beside her, she went into the darkened building. "You can't take them on, not with just you and me." "Them?" Murphy said. "I only saw one." She stopped and looked at me, and I explained to her in terse terms what had happened since we parted in the parking lot. Murphy listened, the lines of the corners of her blue eyes serious. "What do you think happened?" she asked when I was finished. "We found werewolves," I said. "The woman, the dark one with the gray hair, it was their leader." "Group killers?" Murphy said. "Pack," I corrected her, "but I'm not so sure they were the killers. They didn't seem, I don't know, cold enough, mean enough." Murphy shook her head and turned to walk outside. "Can you give me a good description?" I kept up with her. "Good enough, I guess. But what do you want it for?" "I'm going to put on APB for the woman we saw, and I want you to describe the kids you heard talking." "What do you need that for? Don't you have the plates off the car she was driving?" "I already called them in," Murphy said. "Rental, probably taken under a false ID." "I think you've got the wrong people, Murph," I said. "Don't put out that APB." "Why shouldn't I?" Murphy asked. "Someone follows me back to town from the scene of a murder. Not only that, but you can confirm to me that they were the killer from the scene." "Not in a court of law, I know, but you can give it to me, and that's enough. Standard investigation will turn up the rest if we know where to look." I held up my hand. Hold on. My spell didn't tell me that the woman was the killer, only that was her blood at the scene." Murphy folded her arms and glared up at me. "Whose side are you on, anyway?" "You still don't get it, Murphy," I said, my own temper rising a little. "You don't start something with the kind of people who live in Boogity Land unless you're willing to take it all the way, right there, right then. If you start harassing a pack of werewolves, sending the police after them, you've just declared war. You better be ready to fight it." Murphy thrust her jaw out. Don't worry about me. I can handle it. I'm not saying you can't, I said, but whatever it was that tore apart Spike back at Marcone's club wasn't the same thing that was with me in the dark back there. I jerked my head at the main room of the department store. Oh, yeah, Murphy said. Why not? Because it could have killed me, and it didn't. You don't think you could have taken care of yourself against a wolf, Harry? In the dark, I said, Murphy. It's been nearly 100 years since the wolf went extinct in most of the United States. You've got no idea, none at all, of how dangerous they can be. A wolf can run faster than you can drive a car through most of Chicago. His jaws can snap your thigh bones with one jerk. A wolf can see the heat of your body in the complete dark and can count hairs on your head from 100 yards off by starlight. He can hear your heart beating 30 or 40 yards away. The wolf that was there in the dark with me could have killed me easy. It didn't. It disarmed me even if after I hit it, and then it left. And that doesn't mean anything, Murphy said, but she folded her arms over her stomach and glanced at the shadows around with a little shiver. Maybe the killer knows you. Maybe it didn't want to risk killing a wizard. Maybe, just maybe, the wolf did throw you off. Maybe it spared you just so you would react in this way to avoid suspicion. Maybe, I admitted, but I don't think so. The kids I saw, I shook my head. Don't put out the APB just yet. Hold off on it until I can get you some more information. Look, you pay me to give you my advice, to be your consultant of the supernatural. I'm your expert, right? Listen to me. Trust me. She stared up at my face, her expression intent, looking away quickly, then her eyes met mine. Murphy had known me for a while. You don't go looking into a wizard's eyes without a darn good reasons. Wizards see too much. All right, she said finally, but I'll hold off on it, but only until tomorrow morning, when I have that report. If you can't show me anything by then, I'm going to go ahead after the people we saw tonight. Her mouth quirked in a fierce little grin. I'd have a hell of a time explaining why I was doing what I was doing out at the crime scene in Rosemont anyway. The grin vanished, leaving only ferocity. But you will have the information for me, Dresden, bright and early. Make no mistake, I will catch the killer before anyone else dies. I nodded to Murphy. In the morning, I said. You got it. Murphy's flashlight flickered and then went out as the filament burst with an audible pop. Murphy sighed in the darkness. Nothing ever works right when you're here sometimes. Nothing ever works right when you're here. Sometimes, Harry, she said, I really hate hanging out with you. I really hate you. Sorry, I'm taking a look ahead here. Oh Lord, we got a Bob chapter. I don't know if I'm going to make it through to chapter 10 today. We will see. I'm going to put that there tentatively. Because here it is, almost an hour and a half in, and I've not even made it. I just now made it chapter 7. I'm in no hurry, though. Excuse me, I have a lot of burps. Probably from eating. I ate not long before I got on, so. Chapter 7. I entered my apartment, tossed my blasting rod, which I'd recovered from the abandoned department store, into the corner next to my wizard staff and sword cane, and locked the door behind me. It was one of those steel frame doors, the anti-burglar kind. I'd bought it after a demon had come stomping into my apartment 6 months ago and wrecked my place. My apartment is in the basement of a huge old rooming house that somehow managed to survive all the Chicago fires. It's made almost entirely of wood, and it creaks and groans when the wind blows, which is all the time in this city, and makes gentle soothing music. It's a place with a history. The neighbors are quiet, and my rent is cheap. Although less so than it was before the demon trashed my place. The apartment itself is devoid of electrical devices for reasons that should be evident by now. There is a fireplace and a kitchen and off the main room, a little bedroom adjacent to that, and a bathroom inside a bedroom. Sunken windows are high on each of the four walls, and one is on the wall of the bathroom. I decorate in textures more than in colors. There were thick rugs all over the bare stone floors, layered on top of one another in most places. Demon acid had burned away most of my furniture, and I had been obliged to scavenge second-hand stores for replacements. I like furniture with a lot of old wood and soft cloth, and I'd made my purchases accordingly. Tapestries hung from my walls, the oldest tapestries that I could find covering the bare stone. In the ruddy firelight, the oranges and browns and reds that constituted the primary colors of the decor didn't look half bad. Sounds very cozy. I went over to the fireplace and built up the fire. October in Chicago is a cold, breezy month, and my dank little heaven is usually chilly until I get a fire going. I dropped a few logs on the fire, and Mister made an appearance, rubbing up against my leg and purring fondly, staggering my balance off to one side. For those of you that don't know, Mister's a huge freaking cat. I mean, like, freaking huge. Like, supernaturally huge. Been getting into the States again, eh, Mister? I said, and rubbed the big gray cat's ears. Mister is larger than a lot of dogs. Maybe one of his parents was part wildcat. I found him in a dumpster one day when he was a kitten. He promptly adopted me. Despite my struggles, Mister had been an understanding soul, and I eventually came to realize that I was a part of his little family, and by his gracious consent was allowed to remain in his apartment. Cats. Go figure. and on that note, I look over at Anubis. He's laying there on my bed sleeping. I fired up the wood-burning stove and prepared a quick meal of SpaghettiOs, grilled chicken, and toast. Mister shared in my meal and split a can of Coke with me, as usual. I tossed the dishes in the sink to soak before I went to my bedroom and put on my robe. Let the wizardry commence. I went to a spot in the far corner, moved the rug there, then lifted up the door in the floor beneath it, revealing the steep step ladder that led down to the sub-basement where I kept my lab. I teetered down the stairs, holding a lit candle that cast a golden glow on the cheerful havoc that is my laboratory. Tables lined the walls, and the longest table filled the most of the center of the room, leaving a cramped walk space around it, except for an area on the far side of the lab that I kept completely clear for my summoning circle, a ring of bright copper set into the floor. Books, notebooks, defunct ballpoint pens, broken pencils, boxes, plastic containers, old butter bowls, empty jelly jars, and plastic baggies lay next to other containers of every size and shape that held spices, rare stones, bones, fur, blood, oddments, jewelry, and other ingredients useful to wizardly pursuits and studies. I reached the bottom of the ladder, stepped over a precariously balanced stack of comic books, don't ask, and started lighting the candles that lay on dishes around the chilly room. Finally bending to light up the kerosene heater that I keep down in the lab in an effort to at least blunt the cold. Bob, I said then, wake up, sleepyhead. Up on one of the shelves, huddled in the midst of a thick stack of hardbacks, was the bleached, smooth form of a human skull, its empty eye sockets gaping. Deep in those eye sockets, there was a flickering of orange light, which grew and solidified into twin points of lambent illumination. Sleepyhead, oh, that's rich, Harry. With a sense of humor like that, you could make a living as a garbage man anywhere in the country. The skull's mouth gaped open in the parody of a yawn, though I knew the spirit within. Bob didn't feel fatigue in the same way the living beings did. I put up with his lip, so to speak. Bob had worked for several wizards over the course of a dozen mortal lifetimes, and he knew more about the nuts and bolts of magic than I ever would. What are we doing now? Bob sniggered. More weight loss potions? Look, Bob, I said, that was only to get me through a rough month. Someone's got to pay the rent around here. All right, Bob said smugly. You're going to get into breast enhancement then. I'm telling you, that's where the money is. That isn't what magic is for, Bob. How petty can you get? Ah, Bob said, his eyes flickering. The question is how petty can you get them? How pretty can you get them? You aren't a half-bad wizard, Dresden, but you should think about how grateful all those beautiful women will be. I snorted and started cleaning off a space in the center table, stacking things up to one side. You know, Bob, some of us aren't obsessed with sex. Bob snorted. No easy feat for a guy with no nose or lips. Some of us don't take a real working body and all five senses for granted either, Harry. When was the last time you saw Susan? I don't know, I responded. A couple weeks ago, we were both pretty busy with work. Bob heaved a sigh. A gorgeous woman like that, and here you are, down in your musty old lab, getting ready to do more ridiculous nonsense. Precisely, I said. Now shut up and let's get to work. Bob grumbled something in Latin, but rattled a few times to shake the dust off the skull. Sure, what do I know? I'm just, pathetic little spirit, right? With a photographic memory, 300 years worth of research experience and more deduction capacity than a computer, Bob, yeah. Bob almost seemed to smile. Just for that, you'll get my best effort tonight, Harry. Maybe you aren't such an idiot after all. Great, I said. I want to work up a couple of potions, and I want to know everything you know about werewolves. What kind of potions and what kind of werewolves? Bob said promptly. I blinked. There's more than one? Hell, Harry, we've made at least 3 dozen We've made at least 3 dozen different kinds of potions down here ourselves, and I don't see why you wouldn't. No, 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 I growled about werewolves. There's more than one kind of werewolf? Eh? More than one kind of what? Bob tilted his skull over to one side as though cocking an invisible hand to his ear bones. Werewolf! Werewolf! There, wolf! Bob replied solemnly, his voice seething with hokey accent. There, castle! I blinked at him. Oh, what the heck are you talking about? It's a joke, Harry. Stars almighty, you never get out, do you? He was quoting Young Frankenstein. I eyed the grinning skull and scout and growled in frustration. Don't make me come up there. Okay. Sheesh, aren't we grumpy tonight? Bob's jaws stretched and he yawned again. I'm working another murder case, Bob, and I don't have time to goof around. Murder, mortal business is so complicated. You never hear about murder charges in the Never Never. That's because everything there's immortal, Bob. Just shut up and tell me what you want. Tell me what you know about werewolves. If there's a bunch of different flavors, tell me what they are. I got out a notebook and a fresh pencil and then a couple of clean beakers with alcohol flame burners to heat up whatever liquid I put in them. All right, Bob said. How much do you know? Exactly nothing about werewolves. My teacher never covered that with me. Bob barked out a harsh little laugh. Justin had a lousy sense of just about everything. He got what was coming to him, Harry. And don't let anyone on the White Council tell you any different. I stopped for a moment. A sudden rush of mixed feelings, anger and fear, mostly regret, washed through me. I closed my eyes. I could still see him, my teacher, dying in flames born of my will and anger. I don't want to talk about it. Hell, the council even suspended the sentence on you. You were vindicated. Say, I wonder whatever happened to Elaine. Now, there's a sweet piece of werewolves, Bob, I said, in a very quiet, very angry voice. One hand started to hurt, and I saw that my fingers were clenched into a fist, the knuckles turning white. I turned my eyes to him, glaring. I heard the skull make a gulping sound, and then he said, Right, okay, werewolves. And which potions did you want? I want a pick-me-up potion, a night's rest in a bottle, and I want something that will make me imperceptible to a werewolf. I reached for the notebook and my pencil. First one's tough to do. There's nothing quite like a decent night's sleep. But we can make some super coffee, no problem. He spouted out the formula to me, and I noted down as it went, my handwriting too dark and angular. I was still angry from the mere mention of my old master's name, and the welter of emotions that rushed up with my memories of Elaine wouldn't subside for an hour. We all have our demons. What about the second one? I asked the skull. Can't really be done, Bob said. Wolves have just got way too much on the ball to hide from every one of the senses without doing some major work. I'm talking like greater ring of invisibility, not just a shadow cape or something. Do I look like I'm made of money? I can't afford that. What about a partial hiding potion then? Oh, like a blending brew? Like an unobtrusive part of the background, something like that? I would think that would be most useful, really. Keep you from being noticed to begin with. Sure, I said. I'll take what I can get. No problem, Bob assured me, and rattled off another formula, which I jotted down. I checked the ingredients list and thought that I had all of them in stock amongst the countless containers on my shelves. Fine, I can get started with these. How much do you know about werewolves, Bob? Plenty. I was in France during the Inquisition. Bob's voice was dry, but that's to be expected, considering. I started on the first potion, the stimulant. Every potion has 8 parts. 1 part is the base liquid to hold others and provide a medium for mixing. 5 parts are symbolically linked to each of the 5 senses. 1 is similarly linked to the mind and another to the spirit. The basic ingredient to the stimulant potion was coffee, but the base for the scent masking potion was water. I got them both to boiling. Lots of werewolfery going on then. Are you kidding? Bob said. It was Werewolf Central. We had every kind of werewolf you could think of. Hexenwolves, werewolves, lycanthropes, and loup-garous to boot. Every kind of lupine theriomorph you could think of. What? I said theriomorph, Bob said. Anything that shapeshifts from human beings into animal form. Werewolves are theriomorphs. So are werebears, weretigers, werebuffaloes. Buffaloes, I asked. Sure, some Native American shamans could do a buffalo, but almost everyone does predators, and until pretty recently, wolves were the scariest predator anyone around Europe could think of. Okay, I said, and there's a difference between types of werewolves? Right, Bob confirmed. Mostly depends on how you go from human form to wolf form and how much of your humanity you retain. Don't burn the coffee. I turned down the flame beneath the beaker of coffee, annoyed. I know. Okay then. How do you get to be a wolf? The classic werewolf, Bob said, is simply a human being who uses magic to shift himself into a wolf. Magic? Like a wizard? No, Bob said. Well, sort of. He's like a wizard who only knows how to cast the one spell, the one to turn him into a wolf, and knows how to get it back out of it again. Most people who learn to be werewolves aren't very good at it for a while because they keep all of their own humanity. What do you mean? Well, Bob said, they can reshape themselves into the form of a wolf, but it's pretty much topology. They can rearrange their physical body, but their mind remains the same. They can think and reason, and their personality doesn't change. But they don't have a wolf's instincts or reflexes. They're used to being sight-oriented bipeds, not smell-oriented quadrupeds. They would have to learn everything from scratch. Why would someone want to do something like that? I said, just learn to turn into a wolf, I mean. You've never been a peasant in medieval France, Harry. Bob said, life was hard for those people. Never enough food, shelter, medicine. If you could give yourself a fur coat and the ability to go out and hunt your own meat, you would have jumped at the chance, too. Okay, I think I've got it. I said, do you need silver bullets or anything? Do you turn into a werewolf if you get bitten? Bah, Bob said. No, Hollywood stole that from vampires, and the silver bullet thing is only in special cases. Werewolves are just like regular wolves. You can hurt them with weapons just like you can a real wolf. That's good news, I said, stirring the potion. What other kinds are there? Well, there's another version of werewolf when someone else uses magic to change you into a wolf. I glanced up at him. Transmogrification? That's illegal, Bob. It's one of the laws of magic. If you transform someone into an animal, it destroys their personality. You can't transform someone else without wiping out their mind. It's practically murder. Yeah, neat, huh? But actually, most personalities can survive the transformation for a little while at least. Really strong wills might manage to keep their human memories and personality locked away for several years. But sooner or later, they're irrevocably gone, and you're left with nothing but a wolf. I turned from the potions to scribble in my notebook. Okay, what else makes a werewolf? Well, the most common way back in France was to make a deal with a demon or a devil or a powerful sorcerer. You get a wolf hide belt, put it on, say the magic words, and whammy, you're a wolf. A hexen wolf. Isn't that just like the first kind? No, not at all. You don't use your own magic to become a wolf, you use someone else's. I frowned, but isn't that the second kind then? Stop being offensive. Now stop being obtuse, Bob chided me. It's different because you're employing a talisman. Sometimes it's a ring or an amulet, but usually it's a belt. The talisman provides an anchor for the spirit of bestial rage. Nasty thing from the bad side of Never Never. That spirit wraps around the human personality to keep it from being destroyed. A kind of insulation, I said. Exactly. It leaves you with your own intellect and reason, but the spirit handles everything else. I frowned. Sounds a little easy. Oh, sure, Bob said. It's really easy. And when you use the talisman to turn to a wolf, you lose all your human inhibitions and so on, and just run on your unconscious desires with the talisman spirit in charge of the way the body moves. It's really a fish and a huge wolf with human-level intelligence and animal-level ferocity. I eyed Bob and gathered up the other ingredients for the stimulant potion. A morning donut for taste, a cock's crow for hearing, a fresh soap for smell, bits of washcloth for touch, and a beam of dawn sunshine for light, the to-do list for the mind, and a bit of bright chill for music for the spirit, and the potion was simmering along nicely. Bob said nothing while I added ingredients, and when I was finished I said, most people don't have the strength to control a spirit like that. I think it would influence their actions, maybe even control them, suppress their conscience. Yeah, so it sounds more like you'd be creating a monster. It's effective, Bob said. I don't know about the good or the evil of the thing. That's something only you mortals worry about. So what'd you call this flavor again? Hexenwolf, Bob said with a strong German accent. Hexenwolf. Spell wolf. The church declared war on anyone who chose to become a Hexenwolf and burned a huge number of people at the stake. Silver bullets, I asked, bitten and turned into a werewolf? Would you get off this bitten and turn into a werewolf kick, Harry? Bob said. It doesn't work that way, not ever, or you'd have werewolves overrunning the entire planet in a couple years. Fine, I sighed. What about the silver bullets? Don't need them. All right, I said, and continued jotting down information to put together for Murphy in a report. Hexenwolf. Got it. What else? Lycanthropes, Bob said. Isn't that a psychological condition? It might also be a psychological condition, Bob said. But it was a reality first. A lycanthrope is a natural channel for the spirit of rage. A lycanthrope turns into a beast, but only inside his head. The spirit takes over, it affects the way he acts and thinks, and makes him more aggressive, stronger. They also tend to be very resistant to pain or injury, sickness, they heal rapidly, all sorts of things. But they don't actually shapeshift into a wolf. Give that boy a Cupid, Bob said. They're just people too, but they're awfully fierce. You ever heard of the Norse berserkers? Those guys were lycanthropes, I think. And they were born, not made. I stirred the stimulant potion and made sure it was in an even simmer. What was the last one? Loup-garou, Bob said. Or that was the name Etienne, the enchanter, used for them before he got burned at the stake. The loup-garou are the major monsters, Harry. Someone has cursed them to become a wolf-like demon, and usually at the full moon. That someone's got to be really powerful, too, like a major heavyweight sorcerer or a demon lord or one of the fairy queens. When the full moon comes, they transform into a monster, go on a killing spree, and slaughter everything they come across until the moon sets or the sun rises. A sudden chill went over me, and I shivered. What else? Supernatural speed and power, supernatural ferocity. They recover from injuries almost instantly if they become hurt at all. They're immune to poison and any kind of sorcery that goes for their brain, killing machines. Sounds great. I guess this doesn't happen all that often, or I'd have heard something by now. Right, Bob said. Not often. Usually the poor cursed bastard knows enough to shut himself away somewhere, or to head out into the wilderness. The last major loup-garou rampage happened around Gennevaud in France, back in the 16th century. More than 200 people were killed in a little more than a year. Holy shit, I said. How did they stop it? They killed it, Bob said. Here's where the silver bullets finally come in, Harry. Only a silver weapon can hurt a loup-garou. And not only that, the silver has to be inherited from a family member. Inherited silver bullets. Really? Why would that work and not regular silver? I don't make the laws of magic, Harry. I just know what they are and have an idea when they're changing. That one hasn't changed. I think maybe it has something to do with the element of sacrifice. Inherited silver, I mumbled. Well, we'll just have to hope this isn't a loup-garou, I guess. If it was a looper, you'd know, Bob said wisely. In the middle of this town, you'd have a dozen people dead every time the full moon came around. What's going on? A dozen people are dying every time the full moon comes around. I filled Bob in on the Lobo killings, giving him all the information Murphy had given me, and started on the next potion. Into the water went the ingredients: plastic wrap for sight, a bit of plain white cotton for touch, a little deodorant for smell, a rustle of wind for hearing, a leaf of plain old lettuce for taste, and I finally threw in a blank piece of paper for the mind and some elevator music for the spirit. The ingredients were boring. The potion looked and smelled boring. Perfect. Lot of dead people, Bob commented. I'll let you know if I think of anything good. I wish I knew something else. I want you to learn more, I told him. Go out and see what else you can round up on werewolves. Bob snorted. Fat chance, Harry. I'm a spirit of intellect, not an errand boy. But when I said the word out, Bob's eyes glittered. I'll pick you up some new romance novels, Bob, I offered. Bob's teeth clicked a couple times. Give me a 24-hour pass, I said. I shook my head. Forget it. Last time I let you out, you invaded the party over at Loyola and set off an orgy. Bob sniffed. I didn't do anything to anyone a keg wouldn't have done. But those people didn't ask for you to get in their systems, Bob. No way. You had your fun. I'm not letting you out again for a while. Oh, come on, Harry. Bob, I said flatly. No. It'll only be one little night. No, I said again. Bob glowered at me and demanded, new romances, none of those tatty used ones. I want something off the bestseller list. I want you back by sunrise, I countered. Fine, Bob snapped. I can't believe how ungrateful you are. After everything I've done for you, I'll see if I can get someone's name. There might be a spirit or two who could get you some juicy information. The orange lights that were his eyes glittered and then flowed out of the skull in a misty cloud of lambent illumination. The cloud flowed up the ladder and out of my laboratory. I sighed and set the second potion simmering. It had taken another hour or two to cook the potions and then to shove the magic into them. So I sat down my notebook and started writing up my report. I tried to ignore the headache that was creeping up the back of my neck toward the crown of my head, but it did little good. I had to help Murphy nail the killer or whoever it was while avoiding any trouble with the FBI. Otherwise, she was out of a job, and even if I didn't end up in jail, I would be out of a living myself. Johnny Marcone's man had been killed, and I'd be a fool to think he would stand idly by and do nothing in response. I was sure the gangster would rear his head sooner or later. Aside from all that, there was a monster of one kind or another lurking in the dark, and the police and the FBI had been helpless to stop it. That left only me, Harry, dressed in your friendly neighborhood wizard, to step in and do something about it. And if the killer figured out that I was getting involved, he would doubtless start gunning for me next. My troubles were multiplying. Hexen wolves, werewolves, lycanthropes, loop grew. What will they think of next? I'm going to take a pause for the calls. We're about to have an ad break here in the next little bit. Go back and read that. Sorry, I'm just taking a little brief breather while I know that we're going to have some ad break here in a minute, so that's why I'm like taking a short minor break here. I got basically 2 more chapters to knock out, and I think I might make the deadline. I don't know. If I go a little over, it's okay. I'm just trying to think what we'll do next. Whether I'll go creative or I'll go video gamey. I might go creative and do 2 at once. Although I'm going to put some music on while I do it. I was just trying to think whether or not I actually have my camera in position like I should. It's either this. I was going to do. Oh wait, no, that'll come out till next week. So, oops. Next week, I will say this. Next week is going to be some new Dreamlight content that's going to drop. So I'm definitely going to be playing that at some point on stream. I could always pull WoW up too. I'm just sitting here thinking about stuff. Sorry. But we do have an ad break coming up in just a moment. I may actually take that ad break to do my 2-hour walk around since it's not long from now, and I may come. I don't want to interrupt the flow though, so. I'll do that after I finish up. I'm sitting here just trying to figure it all out. I didn't want to start another chapter before the ad break started. And I do apologize for the ad breaks in advance. But we've made a lot of headway, though. I mean, like I said, I just started the book today. Here's the ad break. During this time, just wanted to let you know, this is a good time to take a stretch. Go get a beverage if you haven't already. To get resettled in your comfy chair, comfy place to listen. Also, too, I wanted to let you know that every Wednesday afternoon I will be doing the story time with Sin, unless something comes up. It's a nice cozy getaway for everybody. And if you're enjoying the content, please, if you're lurking and have not followed yet, please do not hesitate to give me a follow if you'd like. And if you really love the content, feel free to subscribe. I never enforce that though. And I hope, by all means, I hope you're enjoying the content. And welcome to all the lurkers that may be lurking and listening. And, I love every single one of you, and I appreciate the support. As for me, as soon as we get to our stopping place and reading for today, like I said, I don't do a full 4-hour reading session because my voice couldn't take it. One of these days, I'm building myself up to where I can. One of these days I'm going to sit down and do it for 4 hours or better, but sadly until then, I like to take it in 2-hour intervals. But I usually there's a lot of content involved in those 2 hours. I'm either going to be popping on a game, or I'm going to be popping on to my crocheting, or I may do crocheting at a different time. We'll see. After we come to our stopping place for today, I am probably going to excuse myself, and I'll think what we're going to do while I'm AFK. The reason why I do this is because I enjoy reading to other people, and I enjoy sharing my love of books with other people. Yes, I am reading from an actual hardbound copy of this book, by the way. Although I'm thinking seriously about in the next ones, I'm probably going to pull it up by PDF. Might be easier to read that way. And also, too, it will require me digging things out that I don't want to dig out of boxes and things, and I don't want to do that, so. It's far, as a friend of mine would put it. I've actually been seriously considering merging a couple of my boxes into one, but that's neither there nor there. But anyway, regardless, we've got about less than 20 seconds left on the ad break. Again, I do appreciate each and every one of you hanging out and listening. And for those of you that might miss this chapter or miss this section, it will be posted on YouTube, so please go follow me there as well. That way you never miss out on a upload. And ring that little notification bell too, so that way you never miss anything on both here and YouTube. Now that I'm done shamelessly plugging shit, let's get back to the action, shall we? Chapter 8. The police headquarters downtown consists of sprawling collection of buildings that have sprung up over the years as the need for law enforcement has increased. They don't match, and they come from a wildly varying selection of styles and designs, but they have somehow adapted themselves into a cohesive whole, much like the force itself. Special investigations operate out of a big run-down old building, a huge cube that has managed to hold up solidly in spite of the years, the grime, the smog, and the graffiti sprayed on its walls. It has bars over the windows and the doors, and it sits hunkered amidst buildings that much taller than it. Like a faithful old building amidst a crowd of bulldog amongst a crowd of unruly children struggling to maintain peace and order. The inside of the building was plain, even dingy, but they keep it clean. The old warehouse of a dull warhorse of a desk sergeant eyed me as I entered the station, his gray mustache bristling over an impressive jaw. "Hiya, Bill," I told him, and held up the manila envelope I had under one arm, bringing something up to Murphy and S.I. "Dresden," he said wearily, and jerked a thumb toward the stairs behind him, giving me permission to go. I hadn't got much sleep the night before, but I had showered and dressed nicely before I left the house, in a neat business clothes, for once, instead of my usual western shirt and blue jeans. I kept the battered old duster. What is it, baby? What is it? Sorry, I got interrupted by Kitty. If you're going... no. Huh? I may have to stop for a kitty emergency, I'm sorry. One moment, folks. Come on. Ugh. Lord have mercy, cat. Sorry about this, guys. I hope I still... Oh, no, I don't. Crap. Pardon me 1 second. I'll be right back. I apologize. Had a cat mom emergency. Sometimes that happens. And where did we get to? Oh, yes. I kept the battered old duster, though, with my blasting rod dangling from the thong inside of it. I took the stairs 2 at a time and passed a few cops along the way. Several recognized me, and one or two even nodded, though I could detect a sense of uneasiness from each of them. Apparently I was carrying a distinct odor of the law at the moment. I wrinkled up my nose. The police had always known me as something of a nut, the crazy guy who claimed to be a wizard, but a useful nut who could provide good information, whose apparent psychic abilities had helped them on a number of occasions. I was used to being seen as one of the good guys, but now the cops were giving me the neutral professional glances that they would have given a potential criminal rather than the casual greetings one would give a comrade in arms. It was to be expected, maybe, since rumor had associated my name with Johnny Marcone's, but it was still disturbing. I was muttering to myself and deep into my own sleep-deprived thoughts when I bumped into a tall, lovely woman, dark of hair and eye and full of mouth and long of leg. She was wearing a tan skirt and jacket with a crisp white blouse. Her raven brows furrowed in consternation until she looked up at me, and then her eyes glowed with a sort of friendly avarice. "Harry," she said, her lips curving into a smile, and she stood up on her tiptoes and kissed my cheek. "Fancy seeing you here." I cleared my throat. "Hi, Susan," I said. "Did that syndication deal go through?" She shook her head. "Not yet, but I'm hoping. After those stories you gave me last spring, people started taking me a little more seriously." She paused, drawing in a little breath. It made her chest rise and fall most attractively. "You know, Harry, if you're working with the police again, if you should happen to be able to let me in on whatever's going on." I shook my head and tried to scowl at her. "I thought we agreed I won't poke into your business deals and you won't poke into mine." She smiled up at me and touched her finger to my chest. "That was whenever we were out on a date, Harry." She let her eyes wander down the length of my body and then back up, or staying in on one. "Susan Rodriguez, I never knew you were a lawyer as well as a journalist. Now you're just getting nasty," she said, grinning. "Seriously, Harry, another expose like last spring could make my career." "Yeah, well, after last spring, the city made me sign about 2 tons of non-disclosure agreements. I can't tell you anything about the case." "So don't tell me about the case, Harry, but if you could mention, say, a nice spot in the street where I might stand and get some good pictures, I would be very—" She leaned up and kissed my neck. "Very—" the kiss traveled my earlobe. "Grateful." I swallowed and cleared my throat, then took a step back down the stairs away from her. I closed my eyes for a second and listened to the thunder of my suddenly pounding heart. "I'm sorry, I can't do that." "Oh, Harry, you're no fun." She reached out and ran a hand over my hair and then smiled to let me know there were no hard feelings. "But let's get together soon, all right? Dinner?" "Sure," I said. "Hey, what are you doing out here this early?" She tilted her head, considering me. "Trade me? I'll show you mine if you show me yours, off the record even." I snorted. "Susan, give me a break." She let a little sigh and shook her head. "I'll call you about dinner, all right?" She started down the stairs past me. "All right," I said. "All right, I'm bringing a report on werewolves to Murphy." "Werewolves," she said, her eyes lighting. "Is that who's behind the Lobo murders?" I frowned. No comment. I thought the FBI was keeping that under wraps. "You can't kill a dozen people and expect no one to notice," Susan said, her voice sly. "I keep track of the city morgues." "God, you're so romantic. All right, your turn. Give." "I was trying to talk to the investigator from the Department's Internal Affairs. Word is that they're putting pressure on Murphy, trying to clear her out of special investigations." I grimaced. "Yeah, I heard that too. Why does it concern you and the Arcane?" "The most successful preternatural investigator the police department has gets hung out to dry, even if people don't believe it. Murphy does a lot of good. If Murphy gets fired and I can show how the numbers of mysterious crimes and unexplained deaths have go up after she leaves, maybe I can get people to listen to papers like the Arcane and to people like you." I shook my head. "People don't want to believe in magic anymore, or things that go bump in the dark. For the most part, they're happier not knowing." "And when not knowing gets someone killed?" I shrugged. "That's where people and me and Murphy come in." Susan eyed me doubtfully. "All I need is something solid, Harry. An eyewitness account, of photographs, something." "You can't photograph anything really supernatural," I pointed out. "The energies around things like that would mess up the cameras. Besides, the stuff I'm dealing with right now is too dangerous. You could get hurt." "What if I get shot from a long way off?" she pressed. What if I shot from a long way off?" she pressed. "Use a telephoto lens." I shook my head. "No, Susan, I'm not going to tell you anything. It's for your own good as much as it is for mine." She pressed her lips together. "Fine," she said, her tone crisp, and went down the stairs. I watched her go, dismayed. It seems I was making a habit of excluding people from certain brands of information. Not only were my job and my freedom on the line, and Murphy's job too. Now it seemed that my love life, or what passed for it, was in danger as well. I took a moment to try to sort through my thoughts and feelings on Susan and gave it up as hopeless. Susan was a reporter for the Midwestern Arcane, a tabloid circulated widely from Chicago. It usually ran headlines about Elvis and JFK singing duets in Atlantic City or on similar topics, but once in a while Susan managed to slip in something about the real world of the supernatural, the one that people had forgotten about in favor of science. She was damn good at her job, absolutely relentless. She was also charming, gorgeous, funny, and sexy as hell. Our dates had often led to long, passionate evenings at my place or hers. It was an odd relationship, and neither one of us had tried to define it. I think maybe we were worried that if we did, we would change our minds and write it off as a bad idea. I continued upstairs, my mind a tired muddle of blood-spattered corpses, savage beasts, angry ex-apprentices, and sultry dark eyes. There are times when my work is hard on my love life, but one thing I'm not is a boring date. The doors of the SI office swung open just before I reached for them, and I drew up short. Agent Denton of the FBI was there, tall and immaculate in his gray suit. He stopped, too, and looked at me, holding open the door with one arm. There were bags under his gray eyes, but they were still calculating, assessing, and the vein in his forehead bulged with hypertension. "Mr. Dresden," he said, and nodded at me. "Agent Denton," I replied, keeping my tone polite, even friendly. "Excuse me, I need to get something to Lieutenant Murphy." Denton frowned a little and glanced at the room behind him before coming all the way out into the hall and letting the door swing shut. "Maybe now isn't the best time for you to see her, Mr. Dresden." I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 5 minutes before 8. She wanted it early. I stepped to one side to go around him. Denton put a hand on my chest, just that, but he was strong. He might have been shorter than me, but he was carrying a lot more muscle. He didn't look at my eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was very quiet. "Look, Dresden, I know what happened last night didn't look good. And believe me when I say that I've got nothing against Lieutenant Murphy. She's a good cop and does her job, but she's got to follow the rules just like everyone else." "I'll keep that in mind," I told him, and started to move again. He kept up the pressure against my chest. "There's an agent from Internal Affairs in there with her right now. He's already in bad mood from being hassled by some reporter. Do you really want to go in there and make him start asking all sorts of questions?" I glanced at him, frowning. He lowered his hand from my chest. I didn't go around him yet. "You know about the investigation she's under?" Denton shrugged a shoulder. "It's to be expected, all things considered. Too much of what has happened in the past looks suspicious." "You really don't believe, do you?" I asked him. "You don't believe that I'm a real wizard. You don't believe in the supernatural." Denton straightened his tie. "What I believe doesn't matter, Mr. Dresden. What is important is that a lot of the scum out there believe it. It affects the way they think and operate. If I could make use of your advice to solve this case, I would, the same as any other law officer." He glanced at me and added, "Personally, I think you're either slightly unstable or a very intelligent charlatan. No offense." "None taken," I said, my voice dry. I nodded to the door. "How long will Murphy be busy?" Denton shrugged. "If you like, I'll take the report in to her and drop it on her desk. You can go down the hall and call her. It doesn't matter to me, but I don't mind helping out a straight cop." I thought it over for a second and then passed the folder to him. "I appreciate it, Agent Denton." "Phil," he said. For a second he almost smiled, and then his face resumed its usual tense expression. "Do you mind if I take a look at it?" I shook my head. "But I hope you like fiction, Phil." He flicked the folder open and studied the first page for a moment, expressionless. He looked up at me. "You can't possibly be serious." It was my turn to shrug. "Don't knock it. I've helped Murphy out before." He glanced over the rest of the report, and the look of skepticism on his face growing more secure. "I'll give this to Murphy for you, Mr. Dresden," he said, and nodded to me and turned to walk toward the SI office. "Oh, hey," I said casually, "Phil." He turned to me and lifted his eyebrows. "We're both on the same team here, right? Both of us looking for the killer?" He nodded. I nodded back. "What is it that you're not telling me?" He stared for a long moment, then blinked slowly. The lack of reaction gave him away. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Dresden," he said. "Sure you do," I told him. "You know something that you can't or won't tell me, right? So why don't you just put it out on the table now?" Denton glanced up and down the hall and repeated in precisely the same tone of voice, "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Dresden. Do you understand?" I frowned, puzzling over Denton's behavior. His expression and reaction conveyed more than his words, but I wasn't sure exactly what, except for that one flash of insight the night before, and I was having trouble reading him. Some people were just like that, very good at keeping secrets with their bodies and emotions as well as with their mouths. I shook my head and went to the payphone down the hall and dropped in my cord and dialed Murphy's number. "Murphy," she said. "Denton's dropping off my report. I didn't want to wander in on you with Internal Affairs hanging around." There was a note of relief in Murphy's voice, subtle but there. "Thank you, I understand. The investigator's in your office right now, isn't he?" "Right," Murphy said, her tone neutral, polite, professional, and disinterested. Murphy keeps a great poker face when it's necessary. "If you have any questions, I should be at my office," I said. "Hang in there, Murph. We'll nail this guy." There was the sound of a deeper voice, Denton's, and the slap of a folder hitting the surface of Murphy's desk. Murphy thanked Denton, then spoke to me again. "Thank you very much. I'll be right on it." Then she hung up on me. I hung up the phone myself and realized I was vaguely disappointed that I hadn't gotten really to speak to Murphy, and we hadn't had a chance to exchange our usual banter. It bothered me that I couldn't just walk into her office anymore. It made me feel a little queasy and tense inside. I hate politics, but it was there as long as I was being held in any amount of suspicion. I could get Murphy in trouble just by being around. Brooding all the while, I stomped down the stairs and out the front door of the station toward the visitor parking where the Blue Beetle waited for me. I had gotten in and was preparing to coast it to life when I heard footsteps. I squinted up in the morning sunshine at the skinny form and big ears of the red-headed young FBI agent from the scene in Rosemont last night. I rolled down the window as he stepped up to my car. He glanced around, his face anxious. Then he knelt down beside the window so he could not be seen. He could not be easily observed. "Hi there, Agent Harris," he said. "Roger Harris." "Right." I said, "How can I help you, Agent Harris?" I need to know, Mr. Dresden. I mean, I wanted to ask you last night, but I couldn't. But I need to ask you now. He glanced around again, restless as a rabbit when a fox goes by, and says, "Are you for real?" A lot of people ask me that, Agent Harris. I said, "I'll tell you what I tell them. Try me and see." He chewed on his lip and looked at me for a minute, then nodded a jerky little nod, his head bobbing. "All right," he said. "All right, can I hire you?" My eyebrows went up in surprise. "Hire me? What for?" I think I know something about the Lobo killings. I tried to get Denton to let us check it out, but he said there wasn't enough evidence. We'd never be able to get a surveillance put on them. "On who?" I asked warily. The last thing I need was to be getting involved in any more shady goings-on. On the other hand, as an independent operator, I could sometimes go poking my nose where the police couldn't. If there was a chance that I could turn up something for Murphy or find the killer or stop him outside legal channels entirely, I couldn't afford to pass it up. "There's a gang in Chicago," Harris began. "No kidding?" I asked, affecting puzzlement. It was lost on the kid. "Yeah, they call themselves the Street Wolves. They've got a really rough reputation even for this town, a spooky reputation. Even the criminals won't go near them. They say that the gang has strange powers. Street Wolf territory is down by the 49th Street beach." He stared at me intently. "Down by the university," I filled in, "and by the parks where last month's murders took place." He nodded, eager as a puppy. "Yeah, right, down there. You see where I'm getting at?" "Yeah, I see, kid, I see." I told him and rubbed at my eyes. "Denton couldn't go there and look around, so he sent you down here to get me to do it." The kid flushed, his skin turning bright red until his freckles vanished. Don't worry about it," I told him. "You didn't do a bad job with the act, but you've got to get pretty early in the morning, etc." Harris chewed on his lip and nodded. "Yeah, well, will you do it?" I sighed. "I guess you can't go on record as paying my fee, can you?" It wasn't really a question. "Well, no. Officially, you're a suspect source as a consultant." I nodded. "I thought so. Can you do it, Mr. Dresden, will you?" I was regretting it before I even spoke. "All right," I said. "I'll check it out, but in exchange, tell Denton I want any of the information the FBI or the Chicago police has on me." Harris paled. "You want us to copy your files?" "Yeah," I said. "I could get them through the Freedom of Information Act anyway. I just don't want to spend the time and postage. Do we have a deal or not?" "Oh, God, Denton will kill me if he found out. He doesn't like it when someone bends the rules." He chewed his lip till I thought it'd fall off. "You mean like he's doing by sending you here to me?" I shrugged. "Suit yourself, kid. That's my price. You can find my number if you change your mind." I coaxed the beetle to life, and it rattled and coughed and started running. "All right," he said. "All right, deal." He offered me his hand. I shook it, sealing the bargain. I got an uneasy feeling as I did. Harris walked away from the beetle as quickly as he could, still looking around suspiciously. "That was stupid, Harry," I told myself. "You shouldn't be getting yourself into anything more complicated than you already have." I was right, but the potential gains made the risk worth it. I could possibly find the killers, stop them, and additionally find out why the cops had a bug up their collective ass about me. It might help me work out things with Murphy. It might even help me get her out of the trouble she was having. "Cheer up, Harry," I told myself. "You're just going to poke around a biker gang's lair, ask them if they happen to have killed some people lately. What could possibly go wrong?" All right. That is the 2-hour mark. We didn't quite shy of the goal for the day, but the good news is that it's a good start. Got 8 chapters in. I think the only reason why we didn't get further is because the cat mom emergency and the ad breaks, but that happens. Next Wednesday, about hopefully a little earlier, I will be reading the next few chapters of the same book, and we'll be hanging out and talking about stuff. Give me a little bit of time to do a quick BRB, and I'll be right back and figure out what we're going to do from there. And for those of you that have sat in and listened, thank you so much for entertaining the book reading today. I do appreciate it. Storytime will soon be every Wednesday at about 1 p.m. MST. For those of you in the U.S. And also abroad, please check your local listings for time and place. And I will be back shortly after this short break.